Welcome to the Vault. This commentary is pertaining to Bryan C. Kohberger, suspect arrested in Idaho for students slaying, plural. We're going to talk about his detachment from the world, people, not being able to identify with people. Since a young age, some of his posts have been found and linked to an old email that belonged to Kohberger, an enabling father. We're going to hear commentary from a neighbor, as told to Nancy Grace, that she felt some type of way when her husband, boyfriend, whoever was trying to invite him over, she did not want him in her peripheral. Also, him talking to other people in the apartment complex about the crimes, but yet he remained mum in class. Why is that? And what is the evidence that he left behind besides the DNA on the button of the sheath? We're going to talk about his mental state, if he's ever been diagnosed with any type of mental disorder, evidence left behind, neighbors' assertions of him, neighbors not wanting to be identified, as far as giving commentary to news broadcasters. His father, what is his father's role? The fact that the father asked one of the neighbors to be friends with him is very strange. He's a grown man. He's almost 30 years of age. Why would an adult need to ask another adult to be friends with another adult? It's very baffling. This is something you do with school-age children. You ask people to invite your kids somewhere. He or she doesn't make friends easily. They're shy, blah, blah, blah. But not a 28-year-old. I found this very disturbing. The father asking a complete stranger to befriend his son. Nancy Grace and guest on the topic. Basically discussing Kohberger. Thank you all so very much. This content was uploaded 1 day ago on Dale Carson Law's YouTube channel.
We are outside the crime scene. Behind us, the home where these 4 beautiful college students were murdered. All around us here at the crime scene in Idaho, people are coming even in the rain, in the freezing temperatures behind me, to lay more flowers at the home where 4 beautiful University of Idaho students were murdered. Right behind me, the parking lot. We're out here really early in the morning. Typically, there are throngs of newscasters and reporters all camped out. But I think the rain has scared them away, but not the people who are coming to pay their respects to those 4 students. Behind me, the morning shift of a 24-hour guard service that is protecting the home. And I'm telling you, from what I've seen, a lot of reporters and, crime aficionados, I believe that they would get right up on the house and try to get in the house if they could.
Yes.
So it's a good thing that the guard is there. Don't worry, we've been bringing them coffee throughout because it's freezing here. Last night, again, we drove the route that Kohberger drove, leaving here. We followed his escape route, determined by when he turned on his phone when he left the crime scene. It's really hard driving. We took a video of it. The roads are so bad, no one would take that route in their right mind. It's pitch dark. It was raining at the time. Nobody would take that hour-plus route home when they could get home in just about 10 minutes. Not only that.
Why did Kohberger take that route? It is believed, assertions, that he was discarding evidence such as his clothing, shoes, the weapon. Where are his clothes? Where is the weapon? How far out did he discard these items? Will they be found? Have they been found? And law officials have not told us. Naturally, there's a gag order, so they cannot speak. I also want to talk about in this live stream pertaining to the school's obligation to the students and also the public. You'll hear in this commentary also the school have the audacity to want the kids to return back to class, or it would have been an infraction on their attendance record. How dare you? Someone slaughtered 4 kids. You didn't have a suspect. Law officials did not have a suspect. And you expected the kids to show up personally in class. I tried to pretend I didn't even hear that at first. You'll hear that in his commentary. This is ridiculous. But this leads me to believe that that's your only sole purpose. It's just to get the kids into the school, pay the due bill. That's it. I mean, are you all really concerned about the safety of your students? Because we do not know Kohberger's every move since touching down on Washington soil. We do not know if he walked the campuses, if he walked the buildings, if he was in their library, in the town walking around, a killer in the making. So to expect kids to just show back up to class a couple days later or whatever, it's ridiculous to me. And I'm glad I heard this, because the fact that there was no reward, we know naturally you possibly didn't want a reward because it's a bad look for the school, it's a bad look for the town, it's a bad look for the police department. But you didn't get a hit on Kohberger until the 29th. And you didn't arrest him until the next month. So he was free walking around. So he was a threat to the community, the students, Moscow, Pullman, anywhere. And until you have a suspect arrested, you can't say that everybody was in the clear and free, because they were not. Because you don't know what he was doing in the month that he was free. Please check out my video on that said content. What was he doing for 1 month? This is all disturbing information to me, because we've learned with big business that that's usually all it's about, is business. Making the money, and that's it. And any institution that expects a kid to come back to school within days or a week, physically, it's asinine. Because all in all, Kohberger was free for 1 month. 1 month free. So he was a threat to the University of Idaho, Moscow, Idaho, and Pullman, Washington, and Washington State University. Thank you for joining. Let's resume this content. Thank you. Welcome to the vault.
I would take that hour-plus route home when they could get home in just about 10 minutes. Not only that, we go to his apartment and end up meeting and interviewing several of his neighbors who, as of this moment, had not spoken before. I'm Nancy Grace. This is Crime Stories. Thank you for being with us here at Fox Nation and Sirius XM 111. First of all, take a listen to our friends at NBC.
Bryan Kohberger began in court. The families of his victims are still looking for answers about a motive. The lawyer for Kaylee Gonzalez's family saying Kohberger didn't know Kaylee or Maddie Mogan, as far as they know.
I don't know of anybody that did know him. All those girls were social. They were involved in the college. They were working hard, waitressing and doing different things. So the idea that he may have ran across their paths, I don't think is uncommon.
The attorney saying the Gonzalez family has been in frequent contact with investigators as they look to build their case against Kohberger.
Well, anything that we have, we send over to the Moscow Police Department.
In court for a, as it is called, status hearing is a typical hearing. We are just now waiting for that warrant to be unsealed. You know how long it took to get the probable cause warrant for arrest unsealed? Well, now it may be up to 2 months or longer before we get the warrant to search his apartment. With me, an all-star panel to make sense of what we're learning out here in Moscow, Idaho. First, I want to go to Cheryl McCollum, forensic expert and founder of the Cold Case Research Institute. She's also the star of Zone 7, a new KIT podcast. Cheryl, I've got to tell you and everybody else what we learned from multiple neighbors last night. All right, listen to this. First of all, none of them want to be identified or connected to Kohberger. They don't want to be called his friend, his acquaintance, anything. We learned that Kohberger's father came all the way to Moscow earlier and helped Kohberger move into his apartment there at Steptoe Village. We also learned that his father, who seemed like a really nice guy, according to the neighbor, asked the neighbor to be friends with Kohberger. It's like me arranging a play date for my twins when they're 3 years old. He asked him to be friends with Kohberger and said it's really hard for his son to meet people or to make friends. We learned that the feds took loads of stuff out of Kohberger's apartment. We learned that inside Kohberger's apartment, it was very, very sparse. Not a lot of stuff in there at all. We also learned that Kohberger's apartment is right on top of a little child's apartment. There were a lot of children there in the apartment complex, Cheryl. And it was kind of quite a dichotomy to know an alleged mass killer was.
Please think about that information. The apartment was sparse. I didn't catch that the last time I listened to this podcast. That's why you have to listen to things very carefully. Excuse me. Sparse means damn near empty. So was it a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom? Why didn't he have furniture inside of the apartment? Which naturally we know it costs to get an apartment, seal up down payment. Then you have to put something in it. The fact that he didn't live in the general area, naturally he'd have to buy furniture, used or new. Father helped him move in. Help him do what exactly? Because if it's sparse, that means he didn't have anything in it. I want you all to listen to something very carefully. It costs to travel. So the fact that they don't have money to pay for a lawyer, I don't know their finances, but I want you to also compare that to flying back and forth across the country 2 times in a couple of months. See, Queen stays woke. Sometimes I don't tune in very well to information depending on what I'm doing, if I'm distracted, my mood. So I'll go back and replay something. And this is very pivotal, this information here. The father came out to help. So 1, did the father fly out or drive out? If he flew out this last time, I would assume he flew out to help him move in. But yet you hear someone gives testament that the apartment was sparse. So that means there's nothing really in there. Probably just a bed, his computer devices, things of that nature. Few pots and pans, things like that, but not fully furnished. So what did the father help him do when he came out? Because if he didn't drive out in a nice SUV or flatbed truck to help him go out and purchase furniture and load the furniture up, I'm confused to what he actually did to help. Well, I'm going to go with there wasn't much in there because he wasn't even there that long. And as I said, when you move somewhere, everything's going to depend on your pocketbook. 1, how much money do you have to buy items to put in the apartment? 2, yes, how you like the apartment. And help putting things in the apartment. Because if you're not buying it new, then that means you have to go find somebody with a truck to help you move the items in. He doesn't know anybody. He doesn't know how to talk well with people. So that would be a problem if indeed he needed to put furniture or items that are heavy inside the apartment. You'd have to make provisions to pick up the items. Thank you for joining me.
Cheryl. And it was kind of quite a dichotomy to know an alleged mass killer was sharing a wall with a child. There were a lot of children in the apartment. We also learned something very unusual. I'll get Karen Stark to weigh in on this. So while the neighbor was making friends with Kohberger, as Kohberger's father had asked him to do, at one point he was going to invite him over to dinner, and his wife said, "Don't. There's just something about him. I don't know what it is." I don't like it. I don't want him around. I find that and so much.
The wife did not want Kohberger to come over, BK to come over. Why? Why not? What did she notice about him that was off, suspicious, suspect, weird, odd, peculiar? What are her exact words? Had she noticed him doing something that would be deemed dangerous, such as peeping, hanging around people's windows, hanging around people's cars, lurking around in the dark? Maybe she was going to the trash can one night, or she's looking out her window one night and she saw him doing something odd, such as looking, lurking. Maybe she overheard him talking, strange conversations. Maybe he was too overt with the women that walked by or came in his peripheral. She overheard his conversations to women, to men. So her radar went up. Because you can best believe watching the way people act and their conversation are dead giveaways that maybe something's off with the person. So what is it exactly? The fact that you hear there were children living in the complex. I believe she said he lived over someone that had children. He lives on the second floor, if I'm not mistaken. Would he be a threat to children? But you know, a lot of people who become killers have a type. So was his type just blonde-haired girls or females in general? Would he also have killed children, hurt children? He's empty inside, possibly. You don't care about anything. Why would you care about a child? Why would you care about a pet? Why would you care about the elderly? But as we've learned with killers, serial killers, mass murderers, they do have people that they actually may care for or like. Because we've seen that in mass murderers sparing certain people. And people will wonder, wow, he spared me. Why me? I didn't really know him. Or I did know him. Maybe he liked you. So that's why he spared you. But it's creepy nonetheless, whether you're elderly, middle-aged, young, or a child, living around someone who had evil thoughts and deliberately broke into someone's house and killed 4 people.
I mean, I don't know what it is. I don't like it. I don't want him around. I find that and so much more of what the neighbor told me to be very, very interesting, maybe even probative as it comes to proving the case. Okay, Cheryl McCollum, jump in.
This should survive nobody. Number one, we watched his dad answer questions for him to a police officer. The fact that his dad would say, hey, make friends with my son, be his buddy, when his son is nearly 30, tells you that his dad absolutely knows his son is not somebody that can navigate socially in this world by himself. He's proven it over and over and over. This is going to, again, be a shock to nobody that this guy in social settings is off.
Who is BK? His parents had to have known, or do know, excuse me, their son. I've said that before in my previous lives pertaining to this suspect. A parent knows their child. A parent knows what to expect from their children at some point in life. When you get to 28, you about know what you're dealing with. And it's not to say that a person cannot change his or her disposition, attitude. Of course you can. You'd have to want to change, attempt to change. By 28, you know what you're dealing with. And they knew they were dealing with a loaded gun. Although he went to school, got off drugs, allegedly, he is tainted, not was, is. Because once you have 4 people under your belt, you've killed them, I still would consider you tainted. You can repent all day. That's between you and God. You are tainted. But one would say, well, did they think he would kill someone? I don't know, because who's going to admit that? Yeah, I knew my son was off, and yeah, I ain't shocked that he killed 4 kids. I ain't shocked that he's OCD. He's has stalkerish behavior. He dwells on things endlessly. He's a watcher, peeper, whatever. Well, who's going to tell that? Because you know that somebody's going to throw daggers at you saying, well, what did you do to him? How did you raise him? How did you rear him? When did you notice the signs he wasn't right? And I've brought you content pertaining to psychopaths, sociopaths. A psychopath doesn't necessarily become a killer, and a killer is not necessarily a psychopath. And you will hear Dr. Ramsland say this in her commentary to a podcast on YouTube. You can have one without the other. So who is he? Is he a psychopath? These are people who exhibit behavior with no regard. Impulsive, just do anything. So it's this Kohberger just went out and killed these kids. Didn't know him from Adam. Never seen him before, never talked to him. Maybe not even seen him on social media, because in the end, you don't know how he found the kids. And guess there are rumors circulating of how he knew her, Kaylee. I'm not betting on any of that foolishness. Bring me a receipt. Because some people like the easy way out in assuming things about people. But as you see, you didn't know that somebody was on the second floor, so you can't really say who Kohberger is and what he was doing and how he found the victims. Could have been just randomly walking by at a grocery store, mall, parking lot, saw something that piqued his interest, and he followed them. Bingo card. Now he knows where they live.
And be a shock to nobody that this guy in social settings is awkward and doesn't know how to, move about as a grown man. He also shares an office with two people that are also in the PhD program. I think they are going to be critical. I think his students are going to be critical. I think fellow classmates are going to be critical. We also heard from the woman that went on the date with him that said again, she couldn't put her finger on it. She just wanted him away from her. Everybody that spends any amount of time with this man gets that gut feeling.
Another interesting thing the neighbor said was the father was super nice, and the neighbor, believes the father and mother had no idea that Kohberger could be a killer, that they only see him through the lens of being their son. But it's very clear to me, Karen Stark joining me, renowned psychologist joining us out of Manhattan. She's at KarenStark.com. Karen is spelled with a C, by the way. Karen, what do you make of Daddy trying to set up play dates for Kohberger?
Well, that's an arrested development, Nancy. I mean, as you said, it was something you did with your 3-year-old son or daughter, and that makes sense to me. He's an introverted guy, and so many people interviewed talked about the fact that he was strange, that they could pick up something. And people do. You do. When you're around somebody, it's very rare that you hear he was outgoing. People will say, oh, he's a good neighbor, but you don't hear when it comes to killers, this kind of a fella that, think about it, he was stalking, he was able to just be there over and over again, he would drive at night. He's very much to himself. As it is when you're in a PhD program, and when you're in graduate school, you've got to spend so much time reading, studying, and that's perfect for him.
Well, another thing that I found out, guys, I'm going to go to a special guest joining us, Laura Ingalls, with a senior correspondent with Fox News Channel. Laura, we found out from speaking yesterday, we went all over Moscow, and we spoke with students in the criminal justice program, the same program Kohberger was in, and they're very upset. And they pointed out something really critical that I didn't think about earlier. They said the day that the bodies were found here behind me, that an all-school email went out, including to Kohberger, stating there have been homicides just off campus. WSU students, Idaho University students are believed to be safe. WSU students believed to be safe. Classes are going to resume. They also said that the students that were afraid to come back to campus would be docked. In other words, it would be like missing class. you had to come back in person to campus. What do you think about that, Laura Engel?
You know, that, you can only imagine opening that email and, you know, of course, then we learned, I think it was days later, you know, there was some retraction there from the police of, you know, well, maybe there is, obviously there is somebody still out there. But one of the things, you mentioned talking to the neighbors where he lived in Washington. There was another neighbor that just this week came out and said in published reports, said that Kohberger came out right after the murder, in that time frame that you're talking about, when that email went out, and said, yeah, seems like they have no leads. Seems like it's a crime of passion, talking to one of these neighbors in his parking lot. And it reminds me of the arsonist that goes back to check on the fire.
Oh yeah, that's a whole thing, Laura Engel. To go back and look at your handiwork and get gratification from seeing what you've done.
Yeah, Nancy,
Yeah, go ahead.
that's so typical of the killers. They do that. They go back when they're there. They try to take a souvenir, but they like to go back because they relive the excitement that they felt while it was happening. I also wonder, did he go back because he realized that he dropped that sheep and the knife and was trying to figure out if there was a way that he could get back inside?
You know, I'm thinking about another.
The school, your obligation is to help these kids navigate through the school system to prepare them for the world. How was a suspect running around with a knife not a threat to them? See, this is where you fail the kids. Sending out these stupid messages when the killer was on the loose for a month, 15 minutes away. Stayed over, 15 minutes away. Had access to roam the campus, the neighborhoods again if he saw fit. Still didn't go on the run even after the bolo went out on the White Elantra. Stay woke. Your expectation of the children to come back to school a day or so later after their friends, associates were killed. Think about what you're saying now. You be docked for not showing up to class, and there's a bad person running around with a damn knife. The propensity to kill. How about that? See, this is where I have the problem with this University of Idaho. Because this is still the same school that didn't give Kaylee a chair, cap, and gown, and a degree, posthumous. So you have to listen to the details. Because in the details, you learn the truth. You learn what is not the truth, perhaps. You also learn the attitude of the people immersing themselves in the case. So the university president, whoever your PR person is, you all are ridiculous. You didn't know who the killer was. Nobody knew but the killer. So he was a threat, so long as he was walking free, number one. Number two, docking the students for not showing up to class is ridiculous. And it's disrespectful. Because imagine the kids who walked up to that house and found out that their friends and associates were bludgeoned to death, and you sent a fucking email out saying, you better come to class or else. Is that the message you're sending about community? I'm going to be truthful with you. I wouldn't send a dog to the University of Idaho. How about that? Not that school. So you lead by example. And you can't say you care about the students, the faculty, the staff, the townspeople, when you're expecting a child to come back to school after hearing that one of their other students got bludgeoned to death. Not just one kid killed, but 4. And the killer was on the loose for a whole month. And you're telling somebody they better come back to class. Just think about that for a second. That's no different than having a workplace. 4 workers are found dead in the office building. Come on, Queen, bring it to them. Because it's sickening. You have to keep role playing and using examples for stupidity and ignorance. 4 people are found dead at the job in an office building, in an office. one in this office, maybe two in this office. And you want me to come to work tomorrow after finding 4 workers dead in the office. See, this is stupid when you have to compare murder for murder, situation for situation. So had the kids been shot, murdered on the campus, in the dorm, in a classroom, in the cafeteria, library, you still want the kids to come to class the next fucking day? Think about what you're saying. This is a message you're sending to these kids who are spending all their fucking money, and their parents are spending money to send them here, grants, loans, money they got to pay back if they got a loan to go to this stinky school. And you say, yeah, I know 4 kids just got bludgeoned to death. We don't know who the killer is, but you better come to class tomorrow or else this is a doc on your attendance record. I wouldn't give 2 fucks about that school. I wouldn't give a damn. And I would dare somebody to put it on my record. Because I'd get a lawyer and I'd sue you. Yeah, I'd go all the way with it. Because you can't make me come back to the school when I don't even know what the hell's going on. 4 kids who actually attended the school were found dead in their house, and you're going to tell me I better come back to class. Look, let me shut up because I done got hype. I'm telling you, this university, fuck that school. And the fact that Ethan's brother and sister are going to this school, there is no way I'd go back there. The consultant is supposed to be having a child going there and know of somebody else close to them that goes there. I would check out. Just like you check out a cheap motel, you run like hell. You couldn't get $1 from me, from this school. Let's resume.
I'm thinking about another thing that another neighbor told us, that Kohberger came around and was saying, hey, I heard police don't have any leads. They don't really know what happened. What have you heard? And just like you just said, Laura Engel, stating, wow, looks like it's a crime of passion. That was to a different neighbor. So he was out talking about it with people, but when it would get brought up in class, he'd clam up. Oh, hey, Laura Engel, I learned something else. You know, let me throw this to Dale Carson with me, high-profile lawyer joining us out of Jacksonville, former FBI agent and cop in Miami, author of Arrest Proof Yourself. Dale, another thing we learned, and this was after we canvassed multiple students at the school, that they are not allowed to talk about the murders in class, in the criminology classes.
Let me, so much to break up. Why was Kohberger talking to people at the apartment complex, but wouldn't say anything in class? So you didn't want to draw attention to yourself in class. You wanted to remain stoic and disheveled, looking like a rat trapped in a trap. Got your paw in the trap. So I'll be quiet in class, but I'll throw little stones to my neighbors. It makes no sense. This is why you know he's sick, because he's up and he's down. He's up and he's down. You go in the classroom, walking in there like a fucking zombie. You don't say nothing. But then when you're at home, you're a walkie-talkie. Crime of passion. Was it a crime of passion? That means you had to have had some type of dealings with the victims. So what are we missing, Kohberger? Or you just threw that out there just to be making conversation? See, this is what people don't understand about murdering people. They want to tell somebody. This is why BTK reached out to the news media to let them know, hey, you got the wrong people. They didn't kill those people. I did. I'm still here. Yeah, I stopped killing, but I'm still here. I want recognition, validation, God complex. This is Kohberger. I need recognition. I can't just come out and say, yeah, I killed those kids, but I got to intervene some kind of way. I got to say something. I'm itching. I'm dying inside. I want to tell it, but I can't tell all of it. Crime of passion. Was it a crime of passion? Did he feel something for one of the victims? Had he had an imaginary love affair with one of the victims? And if so, which one was it? Crime of passion. Is this just rhetoric, talk, or he actually felt something for one of the victims, felt rebuffed, fell in love, felt infatuation, obsession? Who is it? Why? Who was the target? Were the other ones in the way? Walked up on the scene during the commission of killing one of the girls. What's the truth? Because see, we have to see the crime scene to know if somebody crossed paths with him out of their room, such as Ethan and Xana. But we don't know because we won't get that information until they go to trial. But will we find out there was a blood scene in the kitchen area hallway? Somebody got their paths crossed with this BK. Let's resume this content.
Allowed to talk about the murders in class, in the criminology classes. They're not allowed to even bring it up. They will be asked to leave if they bring it up in class. And they've been told that it's a legal problem if they talk about it, which of course it's not.
These are students at SWU or students there?
At WSU, yes, WSU.
That's ridiculous. I don't know how to do it.
It really is.
It's a violation of the freedom of speech, and that should be a concern to any higher learning institution.
Well, I'm just what?
Why does this school, who made this decision that they can't talk about Kohberger and the crimes at Washington State University? Who made this decision? Is it because you realize you had him in your phone and you did not know his mindset, his deviant mind? But that's expected. You don't know people. Who knew that a guy wearing clown makeup going to the hospital and children functions was also killing boys and gay men? John Wayne Gacy. A law student was running around in the day and night with his arm in a sling and pretending he was disabled to get women into his car. Theodore Bundy. Putting women in your cars for sex, sexual favors. Green River Killer. So you see, every situation is different. But these kids are studying crime, criminology, psychology. Why can't they talk about the subject matter? As I said, is it because you realize he was right there in your midst and you didn't see the signs? But what would the signs be exactly? Because who's going to come out and say, yeah, I think about killing people often. Please be my friend. I said this before in a live stream. There's probably somebody else in those courses, classes, campuses, Idaho, Washington, that are the same as Kohberger, detached from reality, no empathy, thoughts of murder, suicide, rape, sexual assault, so on and so forth. They just haven't committed a crime yet or been caught. Let me say that. Have not been caught. So you're trying to buffer and glaze over 4 dead people and the fact that your student is the culprit. So we don't talk about it, we make it go away. Until the next time one of your students is accused of a heinous crime, then you're right back to where you started. And this is stupid and foolishness. First Amendment right or free speech, it's all the same. Yes, let me talk. You don't want to talk about it because you're worried that it's going to stir up somebody else crazy. And they're going to start thinking about murder. But that's the whole point. Nobody just studies psychology year 1, year 5 and say, I think I want to go out here and kill some people. I want to see what it's like. Those are thoughts you already had, possibly before you ever set foot onto a college campus. We don't know because we don't know Kohberger. We don't know if he was ever diagnosed with any mental illnesses, mental defects, alternate personalities, ever medicated for anxieties, depression, schizophrenia, whatever. But the point is, he didn't become a killer just overnight because he took a course. He's possibly been thinking about murdering people and hurting people for 10 years or so, or even longer. And as you heard Lionel Dahmer say, I had these thoughts as well. I just didn't act on them. But his son did. So the apple didn't fall far from the tree. It's just one didn't act on them and the other one did. Impulse control. You're worrying that these kids talking about crime, studying it's going to lead them down that road, but you're contradicting yourself because they still have to study it, whether they talk about Kohberger and the crimes or not. So this makes no sense. This is ignorant.
I'm just wondering, are they afraid, is the faculty afraid that they're going to be accused of basically schooling a serial killer?
Well, they did.
I mean, is that what they're worried about?
Well, they certainly
Well,
did.
no, I disagree with you on that, Dale. I disagree with you because that would be like, say, you go to law school and you run out and you commit torts because you went to civil procedure, or you are a violent criminal because you had criminal law. That's crazy. That's crazy talk, Dale Carson.
All right, well, it is a fact, though.
You're going to take that lying down? You're going to take what I just said lying down? I wouldn't. I'd fight back. But go ahead.
I believe that they not intentionally, but they certainly did provide the level of information that appears on TV and NCIS and other programs that provide information to potential killers. And we all worry about this. We worry about getting on national news and talking about evidence acquisition, how they do it, all of these things, because it prepares evil people to address those issues. The only thing that protects us is the fact that they're going to do it anyway.
Exactly.
Because there's something driving them that's very deep in their soul.
Exactly.
So it's not like they're not going to do it. And clearly, individuals who have never engaged in this behavior before make mistakes, as we're now seeing here.
Nancy, when you talked about that edict going out for the students, that was at University of Idaho?
When I was talking to the students, it was, I was told the ones at WSU were told they cannot talk about Kohberger.
Right.
And they can't talk about the case, and they can't talk about any theory or anything like that. And I mean, it's a real stretch. I mean, you could accuse any professor or anyone implanting those thoughts in a killer. Or for instance, what about this? I studied domestic relations in law school. So if I go and shoot up my house, do I then, is my teacher responsible for that? No, of course not. That's just way too attenuated. There's not a nexus between the crimes. I want to tell you what else we learned last night. We learned that a lot of people would see Kohberger, but only walking in and out. He never once, from anybody we talked to, was spotted bringing a woman, a girlfriend into the apartment, or even walking with them, in the car with them. Never. Okay, Chris McDonough joining me from the Cold Case Foundation. He's the director, former homicide detective, and host of the Interviewing. What do you make of that, Chris?
Not surprising, Nancy. This individual obviously has very difficult time creating relationships. The fact that there's, no obvious relationship also makes us think about, okay, is there a sexual component to this? We're talking a lot about looking for the MO, but we're missing what we would call in the investigative process signature. And that would be the behavior that goes beyond the actions necessary to successfully commit this crime. We're seeing a lot of signature attributes come to the play here. And the fact that the university is maybe trying to quash that actually is detrimental to the investigation and quite frankly plays into the hand of the perpetrator.
Guys, so much is happening fast and furious. Now, criminalists all over are analyzing Kohberger's, quote, amateur mistakes. I'm calling him a textbook criminologist, Cheryl McCollum, because when I say textbook, I mean, he read a lot of books about criminology, about committing crimes. And I really do believe at this juncture, until we find out something else, that, as I mentioned before, you and I discussed, he just wasn't getting enough of a thrill from reading about it and talking about it and talking to criminals and actually having students write essays. Oh, Kelly, remember last night we also learned that there were shared docs where Kohberger reportedly was having people write about the perfect crime and reading that. So I think, Cheryl, and again, I'm a JD, not an MD, that it was no longer fulfilling him, and he actually had to try and commit the perfect crime.
Is that true? He got tired of reading papers, reading documents, reading books. I want to know what it's like. I can give the best thesis paperwork to conclude my studies if I've lived it, I've done it, I've seen it, I've smelled it, I've touched it. I orchestrated. I'm there in the room with the victims. I see their reactions. Play by play, because I am there. I am the perpetrator. What led this man to this house? How long has he thought about murdering people? Who's to say if he ever thought about murdering? Just one day woke up and said, hey, this will be good for my paperwork. Let's go out here and find some victims so I can see what it's like. How did it go? How did it go? And the school is ridiculous in thinking you're going to curb a person's appetite who is deviant. If you have 28-year-olds sitting in these courses that decided to go out here and murder somebody, they were thinking possibly of murdering long before they ever entered the master's program and also the PhD program. I think that's common sense. You walk by the store window, you see the dress on the mannequin, you see the outfit on the mannequin. How many times you're going to walk by the window? I bring you this analysis once again. How many times you're going to walk by the store window looking at the mannequins in the window with the outfit on? You're going to get tired of looking through the glass. You're going to want to go in. You're going to want to touch the fabric. Hold it in your hands. Possibly even try it on. May buy it, may not. But I want to get close to the item because that's the whole point of looking. How long can you look until you want to be close to the item? And we've learned with killers, serial killers, that the person is just an object, a thing. As Ramsland said about BTK, he said in his own words, they were projects, his victims.
There will be. You're talking about 7 years. This is what he concentrated on at a higher educational level. 7 years he has studied. So to me, there's 2 points I want to make. One, you can read all the books you want to on parenting, but until that baby's put in your arms and you take it home by yourself, you got no idea what you're in for. And that's just a fact. You can study all you want, but that doesn't make you fearful. That doesn't make you fearful of kids and different things that are not really applicable until that baby's with you. The same is going to be for him. He had no idea the sound, the force, the dog got in his way. Ethan woke up. All of these factors that came to be that he did not count on or plan for. It is a very different thing when you put something in action versus reading it in a book.
Well, it's like a carpenter who...
Let me stop there. Very perfect analogy. Hello, everybody in the chat. Very perfect analogy. You don't know anything until you experience it. The motherhood analogy is perfect. You could want children, desire children, read all the books, listen to other people's advice, but you're not going to know what type of parent you're going to be until you actually have the baby. Deal with the baby, birth the baby, change the diapers. This is when it will be a learning curve. You will learn your own temperament of yourself and the child, your environment, your circumstances. Same thing with a killer. If he or she's been thinking about it for some time, he can plan it out thoroughly. But you don't know what's going to happen until you actually walk on the scene, and confront your victims. So it's no telling how many times he played this out in his head, this fairy tale, this love affair, this obsession. He probably played it out 1,000 ways, played it out how he thought it was supposed to go. I'm going to watch them. Then I'm going to walk in. Then I'm going to kill them. Then I'm going to take something, do this, do that. So let's ask that question to Kohberger if you're listening. Did your fantasy play out the way you had intended? Were there any mishaps on November 13th at 1122 King Road? In your sick ideology, did you perfect your obsession, fantasy to a T? Will he ever speak about it? Because right now he's pleading not guilty. And as I told you, he will run the judicial process in the ground before he ever tells the truth of what happened in Moscow, Idaho.
Well, it's like a carpenter who forgets to put his hammer back in his pouch. You know, you can't do something like that, which he obviously did. And Cheryl, I call you Magic Cheryl now because you really do understand the dynamic here in a way that I have frankly never heard before, which is the bacon a cake syndrome, where you read the recipe, but you can't really put a cake together unless you really know what you're doing and you're a baker. And that's what's happened in this case.
That's right. There's a second thing going on. Nancy, there's a second thing going on. Everybody right now is talking about Dr. Ramsland. Well, let me tell you something. How much time have I spent in Sunday school and in church, and there's a book sealed with how you're supposed to be. I know the playbook. I know what's supposed to happen, but it has to be in me, whether or not I'm going to be a good person.
Hey guys, hold on. We've compared the murders to baking a cake, to raising a baby, to a carpenter, and now we've somehow dragged in the Bible. But I'm hearing in my ear, Laura Ingle has breaking news. Senior correspondent, Fox News Channel. Laura, tell me what you know.
Well, there is the thought here that this may not have been his first time, right? We've all wondered, could he have committed this crime allegedly on his first try? And so because of that, everybody has wondered, has he done this before? It is being looked at. I have spoken to federal and local law enforcement here on the East Coast, in Pennsylvania and Washington, that are looking at that. We know that they are double checking and circling back. Where are the cold cases where there are no suspects? Now that he has been arrested, he's been fingerprinted, presumably encoded, they are double checking that. And we don't have any hits yet, but we are looking into that, and it could be a small crime, it could be a large crime, but it is definitely something that is going on right now as we speak. And we're waiting for any kind of hit, on not just in the Pennsylvania area, but probably in Washington State as well, and Idaho.
Could it be a virtual crime? Could it have been on his computers that have been seized, where he gets on games and kills people to see how that actually works out? And the software writers certainly are not going to know all the ins and outs of behaving that way.
Well, you know what? I do know from the neighbors that the feds seized a ton of stuff out of Kohberger's apartment. Guys, another thing we learned last night is that the county jail here, where he's being held, is called the County Hotel. I call it Camp Flower because I learned that they offer soothing music to wake the inmates up, that they order pizza sometimes for the inmates.
What is this? 6th grade, 9th grade slumber party in the jail? What the fuck? See, this is why I know these people are crazy. Now, I've tried to be very objective with this police department, but there are some things coming to light that is questionable, such as getting his DNA when Washington State spotted his car on the campus, at the campus apartments on the 29th of November. You should have found a way to get his DNA, even if you couldn't secure a warrant. Number one. He's finally extradited back to Idaho. And you're talking about going to certain restaurants in Moscow to get him special food. Do you hear yourself? That's taxpayers' money that you're getting ready to spend extra money. Do you know how ridiculous this sounds? So you're going to do what? Go out and buy 7 days worth of food for Kohberger only, with 40 plus people in the jail as tenants. How is this fair treatment pertaining to the other inmates? It's not. You're in jail. You put yourself in jail. That is your business. Presumption of innocence, whatever. You're still in the damn jail. You eat what's served, or you don't eat. Or you order from the commissary. Ordering pizza. What the hell are we talking about? These must be some short stays to be ordering pizza for the staff and the inmates. I'm going to say it's for both. Hey, Bob, wait, you want to eat? You want to go over to the pizza shack? Yeah, sure. Well, while you're at it, let's get enough for the guys that's locked up. Do you all hear yourselves? Camp Flower is putting it mildly. You know what's going to be sick? If we find out that you all let this fool do work release. We'll find out he's working at the local car wash. He has to check back in about 5:30, 6 o'clock, Kohberger. Just heard that story down in Alabama. Black guys on work release. He just decides to ride off in somebody's SUV. Kept it moving. Now, why would anybody risk running off from work release? Because if they trusted you to be off the campus, then you possibly were nearing your time to be released totally. So, see, this shows a lack of empathy for the students, their families, the townspeople. That you are worrying about somebody's diet. That's his choice, what he ate before he became incarcerated. When you become incarcerated, you walk the walk. You don't have to like it in there. It's not for you to like. You had no business getting your ass in there. You killed 4 kids. So I wouldn't give a damn if he was chewing on cement blocks in there. But going out ordering special food for somebody when this trial is not going to take place to probably next year, we have no guarantee that will even happen in 2023 because he's going to hold this out. That man could sit in that jail for 3-4 years until trial. You mean to tell me you all are going to be having pizza parties and ordering vegan diet food from a specialty house in Moscow, Idaho? This is ridiculous. I'm starting to wonder the mindset of these people now. Really, really I am. Not to judge everybody in the Moscow jail, those working, but somebody made this decision to go order him food out or get his food from there or cater his food only. No, you bring in food for the inmates. He eats whatever your designated meal is for the day, or he does not eat. Bottom line.
Sometimes for the inmates that they have outdoor time, they have access to the library, which of course they should for their legal preparation. But it sounds like a pretty sweet deal. There are about 42 or 47, Kelly, inmates at the county jail. He's one of them. But it sounds like a pretty cushy jail to me, and kind of like, a bigger version of the Mayberry jail. And I'm not knocking it, because where I grew up, it was the same way. But if and when he is convicted and goes into the state system, it's a whole nother ball game.
Sure will be.
I want to talk more about the parking lot we saw last night outside of Kohberger's place. There is just really no way that the neighbors couldn't have seen the white Elantra. It's parked right in front of his apartment every single night. But I asked the neighbor, I was afraid the neighbor was going to get mad at me. But the neighbor said, yeah, we saw it, but we just didn't put it together. I guess you see what you want to see, and you know what you want to know. I've seen that so many times, Cheryl McCollum.
Oh, absolutely. And, Nancy, they want to feel safe. They don't want to.
I live here in East Tennessee, and I noticed a white Elantra outside, Hyundai. And you think I didn't watch that car and watch who was getting in it? And I just used deduction. Nah, this person wouldn't be out in Idaho, Tennessee tag, so on and so forth. But you see where I'm going. So how are you all living there with a white Elantra parked in your parking lot? You have the killer talking about the case, and you didn't deduct his car versus him and the bolo out for the white Elantra. Please help the queen understand. You all are this busy with schoolwork that you don't watch the news, social media. I know you watch the news, and I know you watch social media, and all this information was on social media. So this is bullshit. I just didn't connect it. See, this is the reason why we have the crimes we have, because nobody pays attention to anything. And as I said, I understand that some people have tunnel vision. They don't watch anything. They don't get involved in anything. People can come back and say, oh, hey, these two people were arguing. They were out there fighting. People could look out the window, go back to doing what they were doing. They can see the people arguing, hear them, go back to what they're doing. They can hear gunshots. They don't pay no attention. They don't discuss it. There are people who are like that. They're just oblivious or they just don't care. But that one woman knew something was up when the husband tried to invite him over. She told him no. So imagine one neighbor saying, hell no, I don't want him in my house, versus people seeing the damn Elantra sitting in the parking lot and then connect the two. Or even just go call the police and say, hey, yeah, there's an Elantra parked right outside. Jesus Christ.
Well, absolutely. And, Nancy, they want to feel safe. They don't want to believe that there's a murderer, mass murderer, living one wall from them. They don't probably think like law enforcement to say they're searching for that car.
Why not?
A lot of times when something has always been there, like your neighbor's red truck or green Buick, you're not ever looking at it again. It's just like when you look at your watch, you're not really looking for what time it is, you're looking for what time it's not.
Well, I did.
You're supposed to be somewhere at a certain time. They weren't looking for something that's always been there.
We've learned that the search warrant for the apartment, for Kohberger's apartment, has been sealed. And it's likely going to stay sealed, according to the judge, for about the next 2 months. Now, I wonder where the 2 months timeline came from. And it's sealed over, quote, serious and imminent threat. It also says premature public disclosure could threaten law enforcement, the integrity of the investigation, and public safety. Now, the judge also has a caveat that says it could be lifted earlier, but it's going to be at least 2 months. Who has any idea, Laura Ingle, why the search warrant for Kohberger's apartment has been sealed?
Yeah, that document that was published and it was put out on December 30th. And just what you read, I mean, they've got it sealed, but the judge makes a caveat that it could be unsealed prior if there was reason. But for right now, they want to hold the integrity, just like we've seen for these last 7 weeks. Why they wanted to keep the information at probable cause sealed up. So I'm super curious. I mean, we're talking about Bryan Kohberger's apartment, and we've often talked about the white Elantra. And when we were in Pennsylvania after his arrest, we drove around looking for lots, maybe police lots where that car is probably held in a garage somewhere. But with the reporting that we've done covering crime stories as we know about MVAC technology, about the new technologies that are used to pull out fibers and hairs and any kind of trace of DNA in a vehicle. So if there is that kind of information that's out yet, we don't know. That could be something that we could be looking for. That's what I'm looking for as we move down the road, is when we look at the evidence from the car and from his home, which is going to be a huge list of items.
That's interesting what Laura Ingle just said, Fox News correspondent joining us. It is being theorized, and I think it's correct, that there is very likely more DNA evidence that we don't know about because it's most likely being processed right now. But we talk about an MVAC, they're amazing. Cheryl McCollum, describe what an MVAC can do.
It can extract DNA off items like a rock or a robe or clothing at a level that a buccal swab just cannot do. And Nancy, I can guarantee you they already have DNA off there because the killer, he would have had to grab them on their bedclothes and hold them down. he touched the bed sheet. They have more DNA. There's no doubt in my mind.
I sure hope so, Cheryl. Go ahead, Dale.
It's certainly in the car. And that's where that
Exactly.
really paid off. Because clearly he tried to clean the car. There's evidence of that fact from Pennsylvania. And so there's a reason you try to intentionally clean your car. There's a reason for that. And with these new sophisticated things, which are essentially a vacuum cleaner with a really good filter in it, you extract all that data or that DNA from the carpets or wherever the hell else it is, because there's little doubt, as Cheryl said, there's plenty of DNA. It just takes a minute to find it all. And of course, the initial emphasis was on identifying the guy and arresting him to make sure he didn't kill somebody else or get away. And so they've accomplished that. Now they can take all the time they want in order to solidify the case against Kohberger in a way that makes it evident that he's going to suffer the death penalty.
And that's called the Bardol method.
Go ahead, because I'm really thinking about the car and where the trace evidence could be inside the car. And when I circle back to you, Cheryl, I want to hear a more detailed description of how an impact works when it comes to a car specifically. Do they have to cut the carpet out? Do they have to cut out the upholstery? But Chris McDonough, back to what you were saying. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's called the Bardol method, Nancy, and
Yeah.
you can also get DNA, touch DNA, from jewelry on any of the victims. Let's say the suspect, had an interaction during the struggle where if he touched even items they were wearing, that method through the MVEC can pull that touch DNA off of that.
Yeah, I keep thinking about the car, but in reality, right behind me is a treasure trove of evidence. And Cheryl McCollum, you and I were going back and forth yesterday off air about all the red sticky seals across the front door were obvious. It was like evidence.
Sure.
When you seal evidence, say DNA, you take a buccal swab and you put it in an envelope and you send it to the crime lab. You seal it. Don't you remember how royals years ago would put wax on an envelope and they'd put their seal with their initial or whatever their mascot would be? And if that were broken, then the recipient would know someone had read the message or even replaced it. Same thing with crime scene evidence. You close it up in an envelope, a brown manila envelope, and you put tape over it and you sign on the tape or around the tape your name, your rank, and the date and time. When it's opened up, it is then recorded who, what time, and when it was opened up. And then after the testing is done, it's actually resealed again. Same thing with this house right behind me. The front door is covered with red tape.
What did BK leave behind at the scene? We know that he left the sheath, touch DNA on the button of the sheath, the snap button. 9 times out of 10, his fingerprint. Duh. Did he touch anything in the rooms? Take anything, trophies, take pictures, video? Who's to say he didn't have an alternate phone, burner phone? Because everybody's focusing on the one phone that's doing all this pinging 12 times, 3 o'clock in the morning being at the scene. He turned it off. The phone was probably in his possession the whole time, because who's going to do all this riding around and not have their phone on him? Because if he wrecked his car, got a flat tire, how's he going to call for help? Does he have AAA? Does he have car insurance? You have to think about all those things. Only a fool coming from another state to kill somebody is not going to have their phone on him. He may have had it turned off, airplane mode. He had the phone. So what did he leave behind? Fibers from his house, his clothes, grass, soil. They can pinpoint those little bitty things, especially when you discard bodies. You step into certain areas, wooded areas, pine cones, the type of grass, bugs, whatever's left on the victim gets transferred to the perpetrator, vice versa. And that's the one thing that the killer never thinks about. What's on my shoe? What's on my shirt? Hair shedding a lot. dandruff, all type of little bitty things that nobody thinks about when they're out plotting somebody's death. What did he leave behind at the scene besides DNA on the sheath? Did he cut himself? Bled out? Will we find out there's a mixture of his blood in with the victim's? Transference from his DNA to the next set of kids he murdered. He was dumb as a bag of rocks. I don't even know why he did it. It's just ignorant.
With red tape horizontally placed on the door to show if anyone else has entered and broken the tape. It's really important because they may be going back in there because we've seen the lights, right, Sydney? We see the light go on and off in that bottom right room. So somebody has been in there for whatever reason. Go ahead, Cheryl McCollum.
Also, what did he take out from the scene to his car? Perfect place for DNA, cross DNA. I won't doubt that the victim's blood is found inside of his car. He has to open the car door. He has to shut it. So that means he has to grab the handles on the outside and the inside. He's got to now grab the buckle to cross over seatbelt, if indeed he wore a seatbelt. Now, blood is on your clothes. That is now swishing across the seats from your buttocks to your back to where your legs are down to the gas pedal. And let me tell you, a gas pedal is going to be hard. You're going to have to now get down on your hands and knees to clean the gas pedals and vacuum all around it, the seats. You literally have to have it detailed because you're going to miss something. You have to grab the drive shaft. You have to turn on wipers because of dew on the windows, fog. He is not bright at all. Then you have to decide where he discarded his clothes, where did he change his clothes. In the middle of nowhere, we're in the middle of nowhere, jumped out his car, put on clean clothes. You're still putting your clean clothes back on the car seat because did you take cleaning supplies with you to clean your car out in the middle of nowhere? What was he doing riding around Idaho, Washington? Did he take a change of clothes with him? Parked somewhere on a desolate road, stripped, put his clothes in that bag, then put on clean clothes. But that also means you'd have to clean the seats in order to sit down with your clean clothes. You have to chop up all scenarios. Thank you for joining me. This is the Vault.
Room. So somebody has been in there for whatever reason. Go ahead, Cheryl McCollum.
Well, that's exactly what they've done, Nancy. They're going to maintain the integrity so that the prosecution and the defense knows exactly who came in and out of that house on what day and what time, and then they'll be able to show the corresponding evidence to show the reason they went in the house again and what they were able to retrieve. Now, getting back to the MVAT and the Bardot method as well, this machine looks like a very miniature, like carpet cleaner, like a steam cleaner, and it shoots down the solution at the exact same time that it sucks it back up onto this cotton filter so that it can be then developed into a full profile of the person's DNA. Then they take that profile, obviously, and they put it into CODIS, and they do it in the ancestry if they need to. And in this case, my gut feeling is they used a private lab like Awesome to do the profile because it was done so fast. And like Dale said, now they're not in a hurry. They don't have to rush with the sheets or the clothing or the jewelry or even the dog's collar for that matter. Anything they believe that this killer touched, they can potentially get DNA off of it.
You know, you said off-ramp. I agree. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with the state crime labs. But sometimes a private DNA analyst, such as Off-Ram or Parabon Nanolabs, they specialize in degraded DNA, mixed DNA,
Right.
DNA that has mud in it, that has other particles in it, other than the DNA they're looking for. That's their specialty, and they're not overloaded like state crime labs that can do it more quickly. So I think that's what's happening. And as I always say, and you'll love this, Karen Stark, when you don't know a horse, look at his track record. If this guy left his sheath from the murder weapon, beside a victim on the bed. What else did he do? What other mistakes did he make? Beside that, the fact that his cell phone was cut off en route to the crime scene and then turned on that lonely dirt road, bumpy dirt road in the middle of the night, he turns it back on. That's an omission. It's not actively doing something, but it is out of character. Like if he, like myself, leave my phone on all the time, and I charge it at night, turn it on, I leave it on all the time, and then at that particular moment he turns it off. That's uncharacteristic, and that omission proves something, Karen Stark.
Yeah, Nancy, we kept talking about, he's a student and, he's studying this, you have to go into graduate school, you have to be so smart. And for such a smart guy, he made so many stupid mistakes and didn't really think it through clearly. When I had this image that he kept rehearsing in his mind, but even the fact that he's surrounded by blood, right? How is he going to get all of that out of his car? It's
Exactly.
on his clothes, somewhere on his shoes, on the gas pedal on. It's there. He left the seat, and then he didn't think of small details that you would have assumed he was sure about and fearful about.
Exactly. Gas pedal, gonna be hard. The grooves of the gas pedal. That's some serious work down there. Hands and knees trying to scrub the gas pedal. You'd have to spray it, wipe it up quick. You're still gonna have residue running from the spray. That's why he was cleaning it thoroughly in Pennsylvania, which would make you wonder if he actually cleaned it after he killed the kids. Because why are you vigorously cleaning it in Pennsylvania? It's a whole month later. It's weird. Because he knew something was up when he got pulled over 2 times in Indiana. His mind was racing. Traffic stop number 1, traffic stop number 2. Oh, hell no. They own me. I got to hurry up, get this car to the house. I got to scrub. And little did he know they were watching in Pennsylvania. But he knew. I won't doubt that he saw strange cars driving by the house, sitting on roads, on the street. He knew they were there. That's why he's coming out with surgical gloves, emptying trash at odd hours of the morning and dumping them in other neighbors' bins. And this is how you know he's a lurker, because he's coming out in the wee hour with surgical gloves on, dumping stuff. So now let's ask, what was the time of day when he was cleaning the car? He has a pattern, and I believe he's a lurker. He always lurked around in the dark, jogged, ran, walked, and he watched people in the dark. I put my money on it. And daytime too, because we find out he was watching the kids during the day, and they had no idea.
To Dale Carson, it was either Dale or Chris McDonough that first brought up the idea of the killer having a, quote, lair behind the house. And we went up there and examined so many spots where the killer could have sat and looked right in to the bedroom windows of the girls. Do you think anybody on the panel that he wore a protective outfit and then discarded the clothes on his escape route? Or would he be stupid enough to take the clothes home and try to wash them?
Yes.
Jump in, Chris.
I think he came prepared for that evening, and after the incident, I believe he did discard those items in various locations, which is consistent with the idea of he had a fantasy purpose here. What that is, we don't know yet, but he was very consistent in, the overkill, the after the scene, what he did, when he left, to your point. So I'm going to be really surprised if they find those particular items in the house, with the exception of the knife.
What about the shoes? Chris?
I'm going to be surprised. I think Cheryl will, jump in here. I think it's going to be really surprising if he still has those shoes.
Yes.
But
I
it's
think he
possible,
still has him.
but I'm not going with it yet.
Agree or disagree, Bill Carson?
I've handled a number of these cases, and typically the individual is wearing a jumpsuit and takes all of that clothing off and throws it in a dumpster. And we have a significant period of time between the time that that white car was at least identified to the public and the actual killing. So there's plenty of opportunity for those things to be in a dump somewhere, but it's going to be too difficult to find them in a dump. So they're not going to do that sort of processing. But the idea that he kept stuff, that's certainly consistent with serial killers, but I don't know that it's consistent here because as one of your...
Did he wear a cover suit? Booties. He couldn't have wore booties because they have a footprint at DM's door. So he didn't wear booties. Did he cover his car? Since some of you are mentioning that in the chat. Plastic cover, seat cover. Could have bought a cover, then disposed of it. Cover wheel for the steering wheel. Then took all of it and threw it away in the dumpster. Has law officials, FBI, tried searching any dumpsters in the general area and the route that they believe he took around Idaho, Washington? And what about the landfill? Was the landfill ever checked for discarding any items? Thank you for joining me. Did he keep his shoes? A lot of times killers keep the shoes thinking they can wash them. Take the shoestrings out, replace the shoestrings, but the blood and DNA or any type of fluid is down in the grooves of the shoes and it doesn't thoroughly clean. We know that you can't get blood out, but when you have a God complex, you don't care. So did he discard all of his clothing, shoes and clothes? Did he take some clothes back and wash them in the washing machine? And did he keep those tennis shoes or shoes he wore to the crime scene? If they are indeed Vans cost a little money. They're not a $20 shoe. So perhaps he kept the shoe, tried to wash them in the washing machine or wash by spot cleaning. Does he still have the shoes? Did he keep the shoes? Did he wash his clothes? Did he wear street clothes? Did he come prepared with a change of clothes? Did he wear a suit? Paper suit, plastic suit.
Your other guest, Joseph, said, if there's a fracture in that knife that's still in one of the bones of the body, they can find that fracture and connect the two together. He can't be that dumb, although I will say anyone with any sense would have left his phone on and back in his apartment. And that way you have no connection.
Guys, I want to circle back to why there is a serious threat of damage and premature public disclosure of this warrant could threaten law enforcement. Why could they possibly put those words in the judge's decision to seal the search warrant for Kohberger's apartment? Why would they do that, Cheryl McCollum?
Nancy, the only time I've heard of that happening is if somebody has connections to gang or drug activity. Now, I do know that he used to have a past addiction to heroin. If he got back on some type of drug and was meeting somebody, at different locations, and again, his phone will tell that, his activity will tell that, his bank account will tell that. Maybe they were afraid that this person may have some type of retaliation toward law enforcement if they think law enforcement is going to make a connection and come after them as a secondary maneuver.
So what was the deal with that sealing that warrant? Was it just a discrepancy because of notifying Pullman, Washington, some type of threat from the apartment, evidence, material in the apartment, people working the case? What is this sealed apartment warrant all about? Anything personal there? Manifesto, bulletin board with people's names on it. So you don't know. Did he have a hit list? Could he have had a hit list? Because remember I brought you all a story a few years back about a woman who killed a guy in a cigar lounge outside of Chicago. She killed him and a few of his friends. They're all sitting at a table. They believe she had some type of relations with him in the past. The thing that was interesting was when they went to her home in Chicago, When they went into her apartment, they found different men's names written on the wall. Naturally, they didn't mention that to the public for the obvious reason. But they did contact those men to let them know that their names were on the wall. So one would wonder, did she have a hit list of people who she felt wronged her? So could this possibly be the reason why they were sealed? The warrant said he had a hit list, manifesto. Did he have people's names on it? Professors, staff members, people in the apartment complex, other people he was stalking. What was found in Kohberger's apartment?
Law enforcement is going to make a connection and come after them as a secondary maneuver.
Well, it could be novel investigative techniques as well.
I'm not sure what you mean by novel investigative techniques, but I will tell you this. They're playing it really smartly because they did not release that PC affidavit that it talked about DM identifying Kohberger, or in other words, not him by name, but could describe him to an extent. They did not release that until he was in jail to make sure he couldn't come back and kill her, kill DM. They also stated or put it out there that DM and BF, the other roommates, they made it very clear they were on the first floor, when in fact they were on the second, at least DM was on the second floor with the ability to watch the killer leave. So they kept that a secret until after he was behind bars. And I'm wondering if a similar strategy is not being employed with the search warrant for his apartment. Laura, what's next?
Well, circling back to what you mentioned about the search warrants on page 2 and talking about why these search warrants would be sealed, they also mention the personal privacy. That's item 2 on the search warrant. The personal privacy interests of the witness, victims, and victims' families named in the application filed in this cause also supports sealing the documents filed in this matter. So it's an impact on law enforcement and public safety, but also about the personal privacy. And as we have seen with the other victims' families, we've heard from the Gonzalez family quite a bit, as we know. Ethan Chapin's family members just basically broke their silence, speaking about the case in a Facebook page. The mother talking about on an update saying that anything that they had for Ethan is now frozen with the defense. The family of Ethan Chapin going on to say, for us it involves 2 vehicles, ease, belonging, and a nice set of golf clubs. They've met with prosecutors, handled media inquiries, managed grief, talked, and continue to try to process what they call their new normal. So there is who knows what in those search warrants that they want to keep private from all of us as they continue to process these multiple crime scenes. And I also want to mention, I was asking about the University of Idaho earlier, as we know that classes have resumed. Ethan was a triplet. His brother and sister, Maisie and Hunter, returned to the campus of the University of Idaho this week. That could be another reason why, people are being very careful with them. They are going back to their classes. Can you imagine? These 3 children, these siblings, these triplets, chose this college. I spoke to the family spokesperson for Ethan Chapin this week. They said these 3 chose University of Idaho to be together. They wanted to learn together. They wanted to have the college experience together. And now 2 are returning without their brother this week.
Laura Engel, that just broke my heart. And then Ethan's family posted a picture of the triplets when they were young. And just heartbreaking to me. Multiple bombshells emerging from the hearing that was held at the courthouse. It was called a status conference, but this is what emerged. Kohberger's preliminary hearing, where we will hear more evidence, has been set for June 26th at 9 a.m. We all know that Kohberger was in court for his status hearing in an orange t-shirt, and he told the court he waived his right to a speedy trial. That is significant. Under our Constitution, you can demand a speedy trial. You don't have to stay in jail for a year before your trial goes to a jury. If a speedy trial is demanded, the state has to gather its evidence and try you in that grand jury term, which is usually 2 months, and 1 other. In other words, your trial will go down within 4 to 6 months if you file a speedy trial demand. We know that preliminary hearing is set. I'm surprised they're not using a grand jury instead of a preliminary hearing, because the state will have to show part of its case to the defense at a preliminary hearing, where a grand jury is conducted in secret. Right now, we expect the search warrants for Kohberger's apartment to be released on March 1. We're hoping they are released before then. Behind me, even in the rain, and it's really cold out here, people are continuing to come and leave flowers in memory of the 4 victims that died right behind us. And we will do the same. Nancy Grace, Crime Story, signing off.
All right, everybody, that's Nancy Grace and her guest. Thank you for following The Vault. If you'd like to donate to this great network, $Beganji129 Cash App. Stickers and chats are welcome during this live stream. This content is pertaining to his demeanor after the murders, talking to residents at his apartment complex that he believed was a crime of passion. So let's ask the obvious question. How many people did Kohberger speak to after the murders? What all did he say to the residents? Did any of them get a feeling that perhaps he was involved or just out of whack? Why did he go to the classroom quiet and stoic and not speak about it? The fact that the school does not want anyone speaking of the content of the murders and Kohberger. Why not? They're studying criminology, psychology. He will be no different than any other person that they will study. If you think his effect, what he did is going to affect the students, well, that's just going to affect them if they were in class with him, they knew of him. It's common sense. But the point is, he was probably contemplating murder long before he even made it to the state of Washington. And he will be no different than any other student sitting there that has an ill mind, tainted, deviant. They're studying this. So it's to be expected that somebody's going to lash out eventually, and they are a criminology, psychology major, PhD student, psychologist, psychiatrist. And what I've learned from a girl in high school, she said, you should know they're the last to go, the psychiatrist. I should know my daddy's one. The point is, you don't know the human mind. You also got information in this commentary pertaining to University of Idaho, telling the kids they had to come back to class after sending them a stupid text message that somebody's been killed. They had to show up. They would be docked on their attendance record for not showing up. The enabling father asking the neighbor to be friends with his son. Why? He's not a child. He's a grown man, almost 30. So this means you know what type of son you have, his disposition, his attitude, you and the mother, sisters, family members, that he's a little bit off, awkward, which we know that a lot of people are shy, introverted, extroverted, but they are not killers yet. How did this neighbor feel knowing this man is asking him to be friends with this guy? Did he try to be friends with him after the father said that? Was he trying to be his friend before the father came? When did the father actually go to Moscow to help him move in? What's all in the apartment left behind? Evidentiary material. The neighbor's intuition, the woman who didn't want him in the apartment, told her husband, no, don't invite him. What exactly did she say to the husband? What is it that she noticed about Kohberger that was off, indifferent, strange, peculiar? Was he doing strange things on the property pertaining to women's, walking around lurking, stalking, being out at night suspiciously? And once again, what is the evidence left behind at the crime scene by Kohberger besides the DNA on the sheath? Did he cut himself, leave behind blood, any type of fluid, sweat? Did he touch any other items in the apartment house? On the door, leaving, coming, going, stair railings, footprints, in blood. Who is Bryan C. Kohberger? Is he mentally ill? Will he eventually tell the truth to what happened? Change his plea depending on the evidentiary material? Will his lawyer eventually say, hey, they've got too much, you need to plead guilty? Or will he go for the insanity Please, some people think he might do that down the road. I don't know. But what would be sad if this case is drawn out year for year for year because he wants to play Minecraft with the judicial process, lawyers, judges, the public. Special diet. Moscow jail, you know better. He deserves to eat whatever you all serve to the inmates, whether it's pizza or Subway. No special treatment. As I said, many rumors circulating between he and the housemates, him knowing them, not knowing them, relationships, I don't know. We will wait to see what they have when it's time to go to trial, what they have against Kohberger. Posts have been linked to him. Weird posts when he was a young person. So now you have to ask, what was he doing on social media while this crime, during, before, after? What was he doing in the 1 month free? What was he doing before he killed them? How did he choose these victims? Who was the target? Okay, 2020 special. I haven't watched it yet, Jeff, because there's a few I haven't watched. So yes, please tune in to 2020 and Dateline. They both have content pertaining to this crime, and also 48 Hours released content last week. So that's 3 broadcasts: 2020, ABC, CBS, 48 Hours, and Dateline, NBC. 3 different networks have released content pertaining to that. I have to watch them because I have not watched but only one. Former FBI agent, Idaho murders were revenge-type killing. If indeed they were revenge, then that means he would have had to have a personal dealing with somebody in the house. Or was it a revenge against a certain type of person that he felt these kids were, or the target was? Thank you for joining me. This is The Vault.
And an attorney. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Always good to be with you.
Let's take Kohberger first. There is some conjecture, and it is conjecture at this point, that he had some serious mental issues. We know he suffered a heroin addiction that he had to go to rehab for. He's also being accused of being an incel at some point. And then there's the criminal justice aspect, where he might have been studying these cases and wondering if he could do it for himself. What do you think makes the most sense here? And we are just speculating. I should posit that first.
I think given the brutality of the way these murders were carried out, this is an individual certainly that has obviously some mental health issues, but I think this was more of a signal of dominance or control and revenge. I think the evidence is going to play out that at some point he crossed paths with at least one of the victims, and his interpretation or perception was rejection. He was not someone who could accept rejection, because in his mind, he was a controlling individual. And I think the fact that there is more than ample evidence to suggest and prove that he surveilled this home for quite some time, that in carrying out these murders, this was a revenge type of killing.
And we did hear from some of his former classmates, those in the program with him in Washington State, that he was perhaps a little bit harsher toward female students and some of his female colleagues as far as what their theories were on certain crimes and things of that nature. I wonder though,
now we heard the other day that one of the young men who attended school said he was a harsh grader. That was a guy speaking. So I just assumed he graded them all the same. He was harsh on male and females. Now we hear commentary that he was harsher on the female students and was very opposing in conversations against women. Does he hate women? Because he did kill women, one guy. Perhaps if Ethan wasn't there, it would have just been the ones that he killed. I don't know. But is he this incel person? Does he hate women? Does he have any respect for his mother? What is his relationship with his mother and his sisters? Because this is a pivotal dynamic in who he is. And as they say, all mass murderers, serial killers are not the same. The profile is not the same for everyone because they're all different individuals. What drives them to become deviant is different. Some came from good backgrounds, no abuse, no child molestation, no verbal abuse, no physical abuse, but deviant. Once again, what drove him to commit these crimes? Revenge type killing is this former FBI agent's assertion. Is that true? But who is he seeking revenge on? Because if he doesn't know these people, then exactly who's the target? An imaginary person. Oh, they look like this, they act like this, I don't like them.
But there's still no murder weapon in this case. The police, according to their affidavit of probable cause, said that they found the knife sheath and that there was DNA there, but no knife yet. How big of a problem is that for prosecutors in this case?
I don't think it's going to be a problem that in any way is going to derail the ultimate success of this prosecution. If you recall, the sheath or the holster that would have secured the knife was left behind. It is reported that his DNA is on that. I think there's more than ample, and I would call it more circumstantial evidence, given also the eyewitness who survived. I think the evidence is overwhelming to convict Kohberger. I think the fact that this knife may not ever be recovered may be of zero consequence to the overall success of this prosecution. But I also will tell you that now that they have basically most of the pieces of the puzzle, there is an effort to go back and backtrack and try to recover video surveillance of those type of stores or online purchases that may have been made. And again, this does take some time. They're probably sifting through his financial records as well as going back to certain stores to see if in fact they can pick up him purchasing this type of murder weapon.
Now, my last question about Kohberger is, again, we don't know the motive, and this is just speculation, but there is a theory out there that he was in this criminal justice program. He studied a serial killer, at least one. We know the BTK killer. Have you ever run across a case where somebody was sort of inside this criminal justice world, this true crime world, and wanted to see if they could do it themselves and get away with it? Has there ever been a case like that, whether that you defended or investigated or just heard about or studied when you were in the FBI?
Well, certainly in my tenure with the FBI, ironically, you find these type of individuals who carry out these type of horrendous acts or even these type of serial killers. To a large extent, they're on the genius spectrum, meaning these are highly functioning, highly intelligent individuals. The scary part and the dangerous part is they live amongst us and they blend so well in. And just for your viewers, the motive, while we're curious to really understand and peel back those layers of the onion to try to get into his mindset, keep in mind, motive is not one of the elements that has to be proven in court. It does not matter what his motive is. Obviously, we would like to know. I think the parents would like to know, the victims, the loved ones, we would like to know. But just to make it succinct and for your audience to understand that even though the prosecution team may never know ultimately what his true motive is, in no way is it going to hamper or interfere with a successful prosecution.
Thanks for watching.
News Nation is the source. I don't like repeating this every time I go live because I'm tired of doing it. Every time I go live, I have to repeat the same thing, same instructions. If you watch YouTube, you should know how it goes as far as the link and the chat and the panel. I don't have time to sit and read endless texts through the chat. My live streams have become very winded. Very winded. Okay? So if you have something you want to say of relevance to the content that I am playing and reading, I would prefer you hit the link. I'm not getting ready to sit here and try to decipher what you mean in a text message. Now, you all want to quit back with these people back and forth. That is your choice. But if they're not in the chat and they're blocked, you will not be talking to them over here. because I don't know why anybody wants to come in the chat and start going back and forth through text messages. We are not at home talking to each other on the phone. This is a live panel. Thousands and millions of people watch these videos. And this is how things get distorted, rumors, rhetoric, and half-truths. If you have something you'd like to say, just hit the link. Because you weren't talking about anything anyway. Who sits in a live chat going on and on and on about knowing somebody, and all you have to do is just hit the link to give your comments, to give your conversation? That's stupid. And you all are just sitting there feeding into it, going back and forth, asking the person, well, who are you? Do you know the person? Seem like a person with common sense and say, I'll hit the link so they can understand what I'm saying. I get this in every chat, other people's channels, Facebook, just talk, saying stuff. And then you start asking the people questions. Well, who are you? How did you know the person? And you think somebody's going to sit here and do this for an hour or more, texting back and forth. You all knock yourself out. I don't rock like that. I'm not getting ready to use my platform for that he said, she said shit. Because this is the reason why true crime is grimy as it is. You already got dead people dead. Then you got the people that want to come in and say what they think they know. It's the spoken word. As Dr. Drew said, people need to stop jumping on the internet saying they know stuff when they don't know nothing. Never been to the crime scene, don't even know the victims, don't know the perpetrator. But swear for God, they know what happened. Then you have the people commenting, acting like they know the victims, they know the perpetrator. Well, if you know something, if a person has a live stream, wouldn't it make sense to hit a link to say, okay, I'm going to come up and tell you what I know? You want us to sit here and read text messages for an hour or more. I'm not doing that because we don't even know who you are. So that'd be crazy to sit here and text with somebody back and forth when we don't even know who you are speaking. That's why there's a link. The link is offered to anybody in the chat chatting to speak, whether you know the victims or not, or the perpetrator. And that just came all the way out of left field. I thought you were telling us something that you heard. You done went from hearing something, and now here come everybody. Oh, do you know him? Do you know him? Man, you people be doing too much. Just abuse the situation. Was this a revenge type killing on the part of Kohberger? As I said, rumors circulating. The killer knows these kids. I don't know. I'm trying not to feed into all that crazy nonsense. My recommendation for this week for a TV series is Candy, now playing on Hulu. This is a story about Candy Montgomery, who ended up killing her neighbor in the utility room at her house in Texas many years ago. Please check it out, now playing on Hulu, Candy. And please also check out Law and Crime Network from 9 months ago. You will hear serial killer expert Catherine Ramsland, who taught Mr. BK. She's talking to this one panel about BTK and Jack the Ripper. I listened to that last night. Feel free to tune into that said commentary. And please check out my earlier live pertaining to police officer Keno Carlos, who's been arrested for theft of items belonging to another cadet at the Knoxville police station. He has been suspended without pay. Ex-FBI profiler reacts to Idaho suspect's online post. CNN is the source. What was going on with this kid? Detached. Couldn't relate to human beings. No empathy. You also heard in the earlier Nancy Grace commentary, no girls or women coming in and out of his apartment or walking with any women. Did he ever date anybody while in Washington? No children, no marriage. Could he possibly be homosexual, bisexual, fighting with the world with his sexual orientation? I don't know. Let's hear what CNN has to say. My live streams are welcome to the people in the chat that chat and that can hit the live stream. I have no problems with that. But any other type of foolishness, I'm not engaging in. I'm just not. I don't have that kind of time. Because lately I feel like I've wasted my time coming up here, bringing information, trying to bring it factual to my ability. And it is going unrewarded. And I don't have that kind of time. Some of you like playing mind games with people on Facebook and other YouTube channels pertaining to true crime. This is disrespectful to me. This going on and on playing mind games. To me, if you're going to behave this way, then you are no different than the killer. And if you're going to act like Bryan C. Kohberger, I prefer you stay out my chat. Don't message me. Don't respond on my community posts. And you will not be responding on the damn videos, because I'm seeing a very ignorant trend since I've been on this platform, and I'm not engaging in it anymore. I'm done. I'm done. Thank you for joining me.
Student accused of murdering 4 University of Idaho students. The New York Times has uncovered online posts from his past that paint a picture of an isolated and depressed teenager. In one post, Kohberger writes, "I can say and do whatever I want with little remorse." And in another, "As I hug my family, I look into their faces. I see nothing. It is like I am looking at a video game." Kohberger is currently being held on 4 counts of first-degree murder and the fatal stabbings of Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogen, Zaina Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. Joining us now is CNN Chief Law Enforcement Analyst John Miller and retired FBI profiler Kathy Canning-Mello. She's also an instructor of criminology at the University of North Carolina at Wilmington. Kathy, let me start with you first. How typical is it to learn that a suspected killer viewed their own life as it were a video game without emotion? I mean, when you hear about something like that, some of this starts to make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I find these texts really fascinating, and they give us some really, I think, important insights as to what Bryan Kohberger was feeling during his teen years, where he was experiencing a dark period, right? We had him addicted to heroin at the time. He's talking about suicidal ideation. He's talking about this lack of emotion that certainly we see evidenced at the crime scene.
And John, how do you think all of these details will impact the case as investigators try to determine a motive?
Well, motive has been still the burning question here, because there's still no indication that he knew any of the victims, and it is such a personal and hateful crime. And yet, you know, as Kathy could underscore, every offender in the serial killer or mass murderer field is going to be highly individualized. Each one is different. That's a given. And yet there are common traits that run across these offenders. And one of them, and he kind of reads us through this in these emails, is an inability to feel sympathy, no relationship with empathy, an inability to feel guilt or remorse, which of course is the combination, the emotional cocktail that allows them to do the things they do, and then to be able to repeat those acts again if they're not stopped.
And John, this detail in the Times that the suspect became fascinated with criminal psychology, said he hoped to provide counseling for high-profile criminals. I mean, that's a wrinkle that you don't see in many of these types of cases.
Jim, yeah. This is highly unusual, but it's also, in this case, there are so many things that really beg to be dug into more. If you look at the posting he did as part of his master's project, asking criminals to come in and be interviewed with him as the coordinator about the psychological traits of decision-making during their crimes. What were you thinking when you did this violent act? How did it make you feel? What was your plan? What, if anything, did you leave behind? On one hand, you could say that was a study, although the structure is very non-academic. On the other hand, you could say that this was, as Mary Ellen O'Toole posited last night, this was an act of voyeurism, meaning these interviews would allow him to immerse himself in feelings that he was having by experiencing them through others.
That is disturbing. And Kathy, the New York Times says that one of Kohberger's friends told them, or told this individual he suffered from a neurological condition called visual snow, where people see scattered dots like static on a TV. And one of the posts says, and I'm reading here, it is as if the ringing in my ears and the fuzz in my vision is simply all the demons in my head mocking me. It doesn't sound good.
No, it sounds very disturbing, but we're going to have, I think, more deep interviews of people who know Bryan well in order to understand that condition that he had and any impact it might have had on his behavior at the time or later in life. And if the condition still exists, we don't know that. So I think it's going to be incumbent upon prosecutors, investigators, and it's great now that they have a few more months to do this, to conduct these long behaviorally oriented interviews. When I was in the BAU, we had an instrument called the General Assessment Questionnaire that had 100 questions that probed into areas of an individual's life, their personality traits, their hobbies, their attitudes, and it was meaning to get more insight about their behaviors, because we have some, casual contacts that said, he's charming. Well, do we really know he's charming? Does he lack empathy? Is he cunning and manipulative? Is he controlling? Does he harbor misogynistic feelings? All of these things are going to be evident in people that know him well. Certainly, we're getting some indications of his personality through his online persona, but we need to understand him offline as well, because at some point the prosecutor is going to have to paint a picture of this individual to a jury, and they're going to have to make some connections in their head. Is this the kind of person, number one, physically capable, but number two, psychologically, emotionally capable of committing such heinous crimes?
And John Kohberger has maintained his innocence through his lawyer. But I mean, given what we discussed so far, there is a decent amount of evidence that police have, that investigators have in this case, do they not?
That is true. And I mean, we're going by the American standard, which is he is innocent until proven guilty. But when you look at the probable cause document, you can certainly see, based on the evidence that they put forward, why he's charged in this case. And you can certainly see, and this is something that people really haven't focused on, is authorities in Pennsylvania that helped put together the arrest warrant and execute the arrest are now going very carefully backwards through Kohberger's entire history, from the time those emails were written as an adolescent right up to the time he left to go to the Washington, Idaho area, because there is an overarching theory that a multiple murder of 4 people in the middle of the night is probably not an offender's first act of violence. They're looking at unsolved cases. They're going to use that DNA to compare them to samples they have. They're looking for any stalking behavior. They're really kind of going backwards to say, was there something we missed here?
Right, especially when you go through some of the things that he said about himself. I mean, that is very eye-opening stuff. All right, John Miller, Kathy Canning-Mello, thanks for that discussion. Fascinating discussion.
Online posts. These are older posts pertaining to Kohberger from an old email account. He obviously is a troubled individual. Can't even say past, because he just murdered 4 kids for no reason. Fantasy, obsession, anger. If we find out he does not know any of these kids, even the 2 that are living, that allegedly survived, then he just picked some random people in a house out to exact his rage onto. Either way, it's still diabolical, because it doesn't matter if he knew them or didn't know them. Naturally, we're curious, but to just kill people for no reason. And even if he knew them, it would still be wrong. Because it's how he did it. You waited till they were asleep when you knew their defenses would be down, allegedly. They were women. You figured they could not fight back. They couldn't win. They didn't. A guy was there as big as you. He didn't win. You didn't kill them in the daytime. That's why I said, imagine had they all been up playing Twister, some type of game, card game, drinking game. Somebody should have made it out of there alive. Because I would have done my best to try to break Kohberger down. I don't give a damn if it was a rope, a frying pan, something. Six people in a house. Somebody should have came out of there alive if they were all up and in the same room. But allegedly, they all were in different rooms, different parts of the house. And he knew this. I'm going to win. I'm going in. I'm coming out. I'm going to be victorious. I am God. But he still got caught. So he's a dodo bird. Once again, when did the father first help him move into his apartment? Did he go back in December or November? Earlier than November 13th. What does his father know about the crimes? Has Kohberger confessed in some wicked way on social media by planting little bits of information into the public's ear? And many people are very gullible. That is the reason why we have true crime. Some of you don't want to accept that, but I got a feeling that's what happened in this household. You have a lot of gullible people walking around. They believe anything they hear. They believe anything that's seen. They do not use deduction and common sense with knowledge. Nothing. You could tell them, I just flew to the moon today, came back 6 p.m. They believe it. Always aiding people, anything they say. Well, I like her. She's telling the truth. I like him. He's telling the truth. Even though you notice something off with them, you've caught them lying before. They stay in mess, drama, but you believe them. It's no different than what's going on here. There were signs that he was off. Naturally, just because a person acts off doesn't mean that they would go kill people, but he exhibited signs that something wasn't right with him. And who would know him better than his parents? Maybe not the professors, maybe not the students, maybe not his neighbors, but the parents knew that something was off with their kid. Way off. Because you got to remember, these are the same people that dealt with him during his drug addiction. So they probably saw a whole lot of stuff that was way wrong with him that we have no knowledge to. And it's only a matter of who's going to tell it. The parents, the sisters, people close to the family. Yes, a bunch of sheep. Very scary. Because the point is you don't know people. So it doesn't matter what the reasoning and the motive is for killing these kids. There are a lot of Kohbergers walking around. There are a lot of people who can be pushed to the edge, whether they thought of murder or not. That's the point. We have sick people out here. You could just easily go out here right now, go to Target and get carjacked, get robbed. Nobody was stalking you. Nobody was following you. You just look like somebody they wanted to assault that day. And it happens. Just like I was hearing commentary on the channel, guy goes up to a woman, just starts stabbing her to death with her kid. So she didn't know him, he didn't know her. He did it because he could. So you have all type of killings, road rage, difference of opinions, passion. Somebody broke up with somebody. Somebody moved on. Somebody don't like somebody. Somebody just wants to know what it's like. Is Kohberger that guy? He just wants to know what it was like. I'm studying this. I need a real life example. I need a real life example of killing someone. A lot of information out here. Please check out Dr. Drew. He has done an interview with a former FBI agent. I don't know if he's a former FBI, but he's been speaking on a lot of commentary. Dr. Drew, this was uploaded 6 days ago. I watched it. It's pretty good. Let me see what Diane has to say here. Diane?
Good evening, Queen.
What's going on?
Just a couple of things that I read the affidavit again, and a few things that I hadn't noticed kind of stood out.
Oh Lord. What's wrong now, Diane?
Nothing's wrong. It's just that we were under the impression that the autopsies were all done in Idaho.
No, dear. Go ahead.
That's what I thought. That's what our news stations was saying, that there was a
So what's your problem, Diane? What is it that you're disgusted about?
You know, I'm not disgusted. I'm just saying that they weren't done here. They were done somewhere else.
Okay.
What
I'm trying to say is, what's the point? What is the point to the information I'm bringing? What is the point about the autopsies?
Because the person that we were originally believed to have done it wasn't a medical examiner.
Yeah, and we knew that.
Yeah, so how do you give a diagnosis if you're not a doctor?
Well, they explained all that in the beginning, that the bodies were sent out.
Right, but they said it was done in Idaho.
Okay. Is that your only problem today?
No. I just was thinking, as far as the sound goes, on the first floor, the heating had to have gone down to the first floor, right? Which means that there had to have been vents. So the sound would have traveled more through the vents, even if you couldn't hear it through the walls, if that makes sense.
So what are you saying?
I'm saying that they probably heard more than what they said, because the sound would have traveled through the vents where the heat and air go.
Well, then, Diane, just say that. Just say you believe these people what? They lied?
I didn't say they lied. I'm just saying I think they know more than what they said. And I thought both the gals saw.
Then that's lying.
It depends on who defines that.
Listen, if I know more than what I told you, then I'm lying to you.
I agree with you, but not everyone would.
It doesn't matter what everyone thinks. It's called common sense. If I told you that I crossed the street in a red dress and I crossed the street in a blue dress, then I lied to you. So it doesn't matter what somebody else thinks.
And I thought both the girls saw Ethan and Zena at Sigma Chi towards later end of the evening, and only one of the girls did. So I thought they were together the whole time, and they weren't, or at least not per the affidavit.
I have no knowledge of those two girls, what they were doing on that evening.
Right. The affidavit says one girl saw, BF saw them, the other girl didn't.
I don't have to explain anything to you because you don't even know what the hell's going on. You come in the chat every blue moon. You have no idea of the dynamics of this network and the hostess. You don't even know what you're talking about. You're like everybody else. You come in a day late, dollar short. You don't even know what you're talking about.
What?
Everything is innuendo pertaining to this case because nobody has verified anything in this case. They have a suspect with DNA. That's it. They've told us nothing else. Everything pertaining to a 911 call is from a social media rumor. And one comment from the captain that the call came from inside of the house of someone passed out. That's it. That's not really giving great detail. You people like to come in the chat and just bogart the chat. Go ahead, finish.
Oh, I was just going off of what was on the affidavit. I don't know anything other than that. It just
that's the whole point, because the police never told anybody anything.
Yeah.
So we don't know what actually happened in the house. Everybody knows that already. So I don't need anybody coming in the chat arguing with me about what the police never told us. And I can ask any question from somebody there on my panel. I can question anything I want. If I want somebody to make a point, that's the purpose of hitting the link and being on the panel, is to make a point. I don't want people talking in circles. I want people to express what they think. That's the purpose of being up here, is that you're expressing yourself. I shouldn't have to ask the person, what do they mean? I want people to express themselves. So you have a problem with the coroner and the sound traveling at the scene of the crime?
No, I had a problem with the original coroner because she didn't have a medical license. And so I was wondering how she could perform an autopsy and give a diagnosis when she wasn't.
Well, I think we all realized
doctor.
she couldn't have done that because my understanding, she was a nurse. So there's no way she could have performed the autopsy being a nurse.
Yeah. And then the other thing on the affidavit was what we were originally told by the police wasn't the same as what was on the affidavit. But in the affidavit, it's kind of jumbled on how they did the interview. And I was led to believe that both the two survivors were together the whole time and saw Ethan and Zaina towards the end of the night, and only one of them said that. That was my point.
Say that again.
We were led to believe that both of the two survivors were together, but only, and so well, originally they said they only saw him at 9, and then one of the girls said that they saw them at 1:45, and I was thinking that was both the girls, but it wasn't. Only one of the girls said that. The other girl did not. That was my point. I thought they were together the whole night.
Well, what made you think they were together?
Because they both stated that they were there at the Sigma Chi at 9:45, and then they were all home by 2. And so when they said that they saw that when one of them saw them at 1:45, I thought they were both together. But when you go back and read the affidavit, only one of the girls stated that, the other girl didn't.
Well, where do you think they were that night?
Huh?
Where do you think they were, the two girls?
One of them was there. The other one, I don't know.
You mean at the party?
Yeah. It's interesting.
Well, let me ask you, let me say this. I don't think you're ever going to get to the truth of really what the hell went on November 12th through the 13th. Because you don't find it strange that the police asked people where they were on the 12th, Ethan and Xana, and then we get this information, allegedly, that one of the young ladies saw Ethan and Xana at the Sigma Chi party. So if she knew all along from original statements given to law enforcement that the kids were at the party, then why would the police be asking people if they have any information to seeing them?
Yeah,
up until the late hour.
That's what's so strange. They both said that they saw them at 9:45, and then only one of them saw them at 1:45. So they both were there, but they didn't both make the same statement. And the affidavit is really
well, maybe they weren't paying attention. You know, if you're at a party, you have to ask yourself the size of the house, where people were. Were they in a den, a living room, up the stairs, down the stairs, kitchen, front porch, back porch, sitting in a car, on a car? So if I'm not in there really to be watching people, then I can't tell you what Ethan and Xana or Pookie or Ray Ray was doing at the party. Where I have the problem is only that law enforcement was asking the general public if they had seen them after, I think, 10 p.m. or 9 p.m. or whatsoever. So why is this girl coming forward saying she saw them there up until 1 something?
Yes.
So that would be the only problem for me, is that, well, if she spoke to you all originally, then you all should already know where they were. So maybe she's only coming forward later. That's the only way I can read that.
And And it is interesting because they were saying there was a big gap that nobody saw him, but then in the affidavit,
I can't see the purpose in mentioning that when you already knew that they were seen up until getting home from the party, then to home.
yeah, I don't know either. And the affidavit is really interesting because it seems like it kind of goes back and forth. You have to really like pay attention who they are referring to.
Well, I'd like to know, I'm gonna ask you personally, why are you focusing on the affidavit so much?
Because that's the only thing that we have facts of. And I'm I'm a coder. I'm a medical coder in life. And so I pay attention to detail. It's my job. So that's why I focus on it.
But you know that this is an ongoing investigation still, even with a perpetrator arrested. So they're not going to reveal everything to us, the general public.
Right. I'm just seeing some little holes is all. I'm just noticing some little holes that I did not before.
But they can't, but think about this. What is deemed a hole is because they weren't supposed to be telling you anything.
Yeah, maybe they gave.
They weren't supposed to tell me. They weren't supposed to tell me about a thud, crying, whimpering, eyewitness. That person was on the second floor. One was on the first, allegedly. A perpetrator being seen. IDing the perpetrator. Distinguishing attributes of the perpetrator. Like I said, the only thing that questions in my mind now is why ask the public about where these two were if somebody saw them most of the night and then knew a time of when they went home. And then that person stays in the same house with one of the people.
Yes, I'm reading the affidavit that the two survivors may have split up at some time, but I thought they were originally together the whole time.
Where is that in the affidavit they split up? I don't remember that.
Oh, they didn't say they split up, but they said one person saw them at 1:45. The affidavit says they both saw them at 9:45, and then it says BM or whatever, BF, whatever, saw them at 1:45. But yeah, there was that big gap there.
Yeah. Well, Bethany is the one that allegedly saw them, not DM.
Right. Yes. Wait, is that right? Hold on.
Yeah, I had to clarify that myself. It's not DM that saw him at Sigma Chi. It was Bethany.
But that was all. That's what I just some things that I had pulled out that I had.
So you don't have any commentary on anything I've discussed in this live stream pertaining to his detachment, the father, the neighbor's intuition, the evidence.
Oh, that detachment is that's just so creepy. God. And I'm afraid that that might end up being something that they're looking at to get him a psych eval. You'd have to have some sort of detachment to make that, to do something that horrid, I would think. I don't know. I rescued some dogs the other day, so I don't think like that.
You don't think like what?
Like how it would be like to be detached. Like I'm super sensitive to people. I overly care, I think, versus not having any feeling or detached or, being detached.
Mm. Well, but you're not Kohberger.
No. Nope.
I'm sure there's more information to all of this. What? I have no idea. but I'm sure there is more to be told pertaining to this storyline. A whole lot more.
I will tell you this, after listening to you in the last couple of months, I lock everything up so well. I locked myself out the other day.
Mm-hmm.
Lock everything, shut everything. But there's somebody in the town that I live in that did something similar, and they never caught him. So
The neighbor's intuition, the lady who didn't want him coming to her house, what do you think she saw there at the apartment complex?
I don't know if she saw something, but maybe felt something,
Mm-hmm.
like the energy he gave off. Maybe he looked at her weird.
Do you think he would hurt a child?
I couldn't say no. Yeah. If he's detached, yeah. I mean, these guys were barely grown.
Well, do you think he would hurt his family?
Yes. Yes. And I say that even just because he had his dad fly over, drive with him. So why would he do that? Like, possibly make, a shield to, help cover up what he was doing or what he did already or whatever.
What are you saying? You think he would use his father as what? A human shield? If what? A shootout or something?
No, not a shootout, but just kind of a shield of to try to hide his demeanor. Because he knew what he did, allegedly.
But can you hide your demeanor though? Because anyone looking at that video could assume he didn't look very well during the traffic stops.
Yeah, he had an angry look to him.
The father wanted to talk more about where they were coming from, and he was trying to get on the road to where he was going, which was get something to eat.
Yeah, he kept looking.
Deflecting.
Yeah, he kept looking towards the windshield and not just straight at the officer. And when I'm talking to somebody, I look at them. But then, that's how I was raised too. That might be culture too. I don't know.
Yeah, well, he's younger.
But I appreciate you and I appreciate your commentary.
Thank you.
I learn a lot.
All righty. I'm 2 hours plus in. I'll probably wrap this up because they're getting too winded.
Okay, well, thank you for having me on.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Have a restful evening.
You too, dear. Bye-bye.
Bye.
What are you all saying in the chat? What is to come out from this case? Very sick. But people kill people every day for various reasons. And as Ramsland said, and I brought you commentary in an article recently, that a psychopath doesn't necessarily become a killer. And a killer is not necessarily a psychopath. But that's true. And also content that you can check on my community board pertaining to Ramsland talking to this panel as a panel guest is that we all carry traits of a psychopath, a narcissist, but we are not killers. Let's just say yet, anyway, because things happen to lead people down the road to murder. And that's the problem, is the jump off. Where does the jump off come in? When do you cross over to becoming a killer? At what point did this person cross over to becoming a killer? Young adult, child, high school? What happened? When you think DM will want to go check on her roommates after hearing a man say it's okay, I'm going to help you, would you be concerned for your friends? Well, see, Tracy, that's the whole point of this story, is that you're entitled to believe what you want pertaining to any information brought forward by the police department and these two individuals. You have not heard anything from this Bethany person, and you haven't heard anything from DM. All you have is this newly information coming from the affidavit. And everything you hear is a version. That's just life. Doesn't matter if it's pertaining to true crime or not. Did she text the kids in the house? Number one. Number two, did she call anybody else outside of the house? Did she text BF, the girl on the first floor? Did she get up and go out of the room at some point while the crime was taking place or after this perpetrator allegedly went out of the slider? See, this is where the problem is going to be for some people who care to dissect this case. It's the what if, did you? She's not going to talk. If she talks to anybody, it will be somebody close to her. I don't know the truth to any of these rumors that are circulating. Like I said, pertaining to BK and the victims, knowing them, dating them, any type of relations, sexual conversations, text messages. I don't know what's the truth. You're only going to get that when you go to court and they release the people's devices and their, searches, this and that. We don't know what she did in the house. That's the problem. You don't know if she came out of that room, like I said, during the commission of the crime, after he allegedly went out, which door he actually went out. Did he even go out of the slider? See, you don't know. Because you're going off somebody's commentary to law enforcement in this affidavit. So I don't know what's the truth. I'm not here to say she has anything to do with this crime, helped in any way, turned a blind eye. You have to be careful how you word things. But all I can say is if she had no fear, that would be my only assertion to shutting the door and going to sleep or whatever it is she did when she went in the room. I don't know. Because that's the point. I wasn't there. Don't know what she did. And another point is, would she tell the truth? Your logical mind would say, well, if you're really friends with these people, you would have did this, you would have did this, you would have did this, you would have done this. But that's the whole point of the story. I don't know the dynamics between she, the girl on the bottom, and the other dead people. Is she the type to intervene, hearing somebody argue, fuss, fight, cry? Because some people can hear you crying, whimpering. They don't get up, they don't go check. Especially if you're in the room with another person. They can say, well, let them work it out. Whatever's going on, it's none of my business. Is that what happened? She figured the two had a fight. I'll leave it alone. Also, the discovery of the bodies is in question too. How did the two come to discover them? Was it one that discovered them and ran and told the other one? Then they went back up, called friends over first before calling 911. That's an accusation I just saw recently. Don't know if that's true. Who's telling the truth about that? Why are these outside people spinning these webs, knowing it's going to be a trial, and you may be called to testify by repeating this stuff? If the doors were open or closed, first discovery of the victims. See, that's going to be a problem right there. Because imagine these girls have touched the door handles. Stay woke, everybody. If the rooms were supposed to be locked from the inside, automatically, you automatically shut the door, then how would somebody get in the room to even see them? See, I've wondered about that as well. Because you don't know what type of locks were on the doors. If they were keypad locks. So that also means that even when they were living, they couldn't just come out of the room. shut the door. They shut the door, then it automatically lock. But naturally, if you have a keypad, you know how to just go back in, and open the door. It's a lot of stuff that there are no answers to. And that's what makes people question the information. So, who discovered whom first? What made you go to the rooms? Trail of blood came out of your room, DM, and saw a trail. Because I would assume he left a trail. That's how you're going to know who he went to first. And I believe he went to the girls first because the sheath is up there. Naturally, you had to pull the knife out the sheath. So that means he walked in the house with the sheath on him, on his person's pocket, belt, whichsoever. And once he got in the room, he pulled the knife out and either lied the sheath on the bed or it fell off during the struggle. I don't know. Because I don't know anything about sheaths and belts and all that kind of stuff. But I'm leaning towards the two girls on top were the first victims. They were his first because the sheath's up there. And I can't see a person carrying a sheath in her hand and then a knife in her hand, moving around room to room. But you don't know what's the truth. What version is the truth? So there's still a few things that are strange. Yes, the coroner's assertion, who wasn't a coroner, whose wounds were more severe, if it's indeed because they fought back. That was said by that lady who's a nurse and also a lawyer. Very strange. Very strange information there. Lawyer/nurse. A few fought back. Of course, you're trying to preserve your life. Why would you not fight back? Were the victims awake when he entered their rooms or crossed their paths in the house? Too many questions, no answers. And that's what's so horrible about this case. You don't have the answers, naturally. Very sick situation. Very sick situation. And Kohberger isn't going to tell anything because he's basking in the glory right now. So he's not going to tell anybody anything. He's not going to even tell his attorney anything, even though she could be sitting there weighing the evidence as it comes in and saying to herself, man, this guy's guilty. Will she eventually say to him, best you take a plea, preserve your life? He quips back, nah, I won't go all the way with this. I want 12 members of a jury to decide my fate, death penalty or not. Also, will the state offer the death penalty as a alternative or the only alternative? I feel the crimes exacted are worthy of the death penalty. That's my personal opinion. Because he had no business going in that house. Because there's also a burglary charge, him entering this house uninvited. And that's something I wonder as well. How did he get in? How would you know you could enter this house without breaking in, breaching a door or window? Did he take tools with him? How would he know how to break in a door or house? See, those are questions you have to ask. Because now you're talking about a sadistic person thinking about killing people, obviously, picking a target. Does he know how to break in a house? Has he ever broke into a house? See, you have to ask all those questions because some think he may have killed before. Has he? Has he assaulted anyone? Was he that guy that watched people just jumped out the bushes, beat him in the head, and take off running? I believe that was said about Theodore Bundy. That he hit a girl once, but he didn't assault her and didn't kidnap her. So that was the start. How's a DoorDash going to leave your door open to your house when you have to be the one to open the door? That makes no sense. Well, Annette, they didn't tell you that the sheath was clean. They said that's what they found as far as DNA. Naturally, he had to pull the knife out the sheath at some point, either entering the house or when he got up to the bedrooms. Maybe it was bloody. They don't have to tell us that. Perhaps there is other person's DNA on the sheath. Did it stay on the bed the whole time while stabbing both the girls? I don't know. Fall off? You picked it up? I don't know. See, stay woke. And as I told you, when you bought the item, your DNA will be on it anyway. Because who's going to go buy something? Let's say you bought it at a store. You will look crazy walking into a store with surgical gloves on. Somebody would be like, okay, what's going on? Or they could just think, well, it's COVID. If you wore a mask, surgical gloves. So I take that back about the gloves. Because there's still some people who may be walking around with gloves on. Most people I've seen just wear the COVID mask and no gloves. So you have to use deduction. They're not going to tell you everything about the sheath. May have had blood on it. Could have had hair on it. I don't know. They just said it was lying beside Maddie Mogen's body. So we don't know if it fell off his belt, fell out his pocket, or he laid it there. Can't be for too many options. Where's the weapon? Did he discard the weapon? Did the weapon break off in any of the young people? Because you're talking about stabbing 4 people to death. So we don't really know how many wounds each victim has. That's something that has not been released to the public. I'm sure it will probably astound many people once they get the number count. That would probably be worse, the number count. But did the weapon break off in anyone? Because you're still talking about bone, cartilage inside of a human body. And then you're stabbing one after the other. So 4 people, a knife could have broken off. Big knife, they're assuming. When you look at pictures of this K-bar type knife that they believe was used in this crime, we have to ask ourselves the worst case scenario of it being broke off into one of the victims. And naturally, they probably wouldn't tell that. They would probably wait for that information to be released if that happened. So did the weapon break off from one of the victims, or he took it after his last stabbing of a victim? So many questions. You don't have the answers. And I still have a feeling that even when they go to trial, there will be some things that may come out that will just be open-ended. There won't be an answer to it. Because 4 people can't speak for themselves, and Kohberger is alive and he ain't going to talk. It'll be a while before he would ever speak on this crime. And then you have 2 people that lived in the house who allegedly, one was on the same floor as Xana and Ethan, and then the other one was on the bottom floor. And then you have to ask yourself, will they ever tell everything said and done from the 12th through the 13th, or even before the 12th, any improprieties of anybody in the house linked to this Kohberger or not. See, that's another factor. Well, there's no mention of the other surviving roommate because, one, she's kept her mouth closed. She's not speaking to the news. And she wasn't the one mentioned in the affidavit as being on that floor. I think if BF was mentioned as being also staying on the floor or in the room with DM, people would probably have said the same thing about her as they were saying about Dylan. Because when you count creaking stairs, old house not insulated properly, noise does travel. And we already know that noise travels when it is less noise in the rooms, such as last night. I'm up late, early morning rather. I can hear a pin drop. I know when the air unit is cutting on. It may sound like somebody's walking through here because it makes a little faint sound. It kicks in. And I did that the whole night while watching this crazy ass TV series on Hulu. I was paranoid as hell because you can hear noise better at night because this is the time when people are asleep. Their dogs ain't running around. Their dogs ain't barking. They ain't moving about on the floor. They ain't hammering stuff, beating stuff, stomping across the floor. You can hear things better when it's nighttime. That's why people are going to have a hard time understanding this affidavit and the account of DM. Because in their mind, they're saying what's logical. You were up. You were up. You can't say that you weren't up 3 times, opening and closing a door, and then you actually saw the perpetrator allegedly, because these are her words. 3rd time opening the door, you all locked face, eye. That means you're up during the killings. Because you'd have to say, I got up at this specific time, open the door, jump back in the bed. I jumped back up a minute later. I went back to the bed. I jumped back up the next minute later. I went back to the bed, jumped back up to the door, and then saw the killer. They're estimating this crime between 4 and 4:25 or 4:20. He's seen leaving the scene. So then you got to count where he parked his car, the proximity of his car to the house, how long it would take him to get from the slider door to his car, from his car to being seen on CCTV footage. See, all that matters. That's going to give you the timeline of how long it took him to get in the house, kill the kids, get out, get to his car, and be seen on camera. You're still talking about no more than a 20-minute window. It's bad. It's very bad. In no way you can excuse not hearing something, only because we now know that she was on the floor and she was there, whether you want to accept it or not. You don't have to accept it. It is what it is. She was up. And who's to say that the girl on the bottom floor wasn't up? Bingo card. Who's going to tell it? If these two are better friends than they were with the other kids, they've probably already talked about November 13th. See, because you don't know everything. And we've learned with true crime, people don't always tell the truth because they don't. When you watch the story pertaining to Candy Montgomery, who killed her neighbor with an axe in her house, naturally she did not, number one, tell law enforcement she killed the lady. She denied it until they had a footprint. Fingerprints come out, put in the paper. Then she goes and seeks a lawyer. Allegedly. Didn't admit she had an affair with the woman's husband. Do you see where I'm going with this? People will withhold information either as the perpetrator or somebody that saw something, heard something, or aid somebody that's committed the crime. know something of the crime. Could be third person removed. It happens every day. We hear this every day in a true crime story. Somebody withheld information pertaining to an ID of a person, car, sound, movement, for whatever reason. The gist of the story is dissecting why they didn't tell the truth. For what reason would you withhold information in a murder investigation? That's the problem. Because as I said, you don't know people. People lie all the time. People leave out things. People forget things. I don't know what happened in that house. I just know the 4 kids are dead. They have a suspect. His DNA has been linked to the crime scene on a sheath. That's that. 2 people allegedly are living. 1 happened to be on the 2nd floor where 2 other people died. That's the gist of the story. You entitled to believe this person's assertion of what they saw and heard on that fateful morning? You entitled to believe that the person on the bottom slept the entire night? We don't know because she hasn't spoken. But I would like to know, was she awake or asleep herself? Did she hear any strange noises? Or was she a hard sleeper or inebriated? Did DM talk to BF while opening and closing doors? Did DM walk out of that room at some point during the commission of the crime or afterwards and saw the dead people but said nothing? Same thing with the girl on the bottom. Did she ever come out of her room during the commission of a crime and or after the deaths, saw the dead kids, blood trail, went back to bed? Did these 2 talk to each other way before 12 noon? See, I don't know. And the point is, will they tell the truth? Because that's the one question people are going to say. Well, why would they lie? Who would lie about something like this? These are their friends, allegedly. These are their roommates. Well, I always say you have to know the people in the story. That's why I never pointed fingers to a killer. And I never said anything bad about the kids because I didn't know the kids. I still don't really know them. We've heard one negative comment about Maddie and some ex-roommate that killed herself. Don't know if that allegation is true that they room together. But other than that, that's the only negative thing I've heard about the kids. So I couldn't assert why somebody would want these kids dead, who would have killed the kids, because I didn't know the kids and I don't know their friends. I don't know what they were doing that night, that morning. I don't know who they hung with. I didn't know their dispositions. Still don't know their dispositions. The few times their parents have spoken about them, that's not giving me enough to say who was nice, who was mean, who had a bad attitude, who was too helpful, who was unhelpful, who was a prankster, how they reacted on social media, what did they talk about on social media, how did they treat their friends, their neighbors. We do know they had noise complaints. So you also have to ask that. How many times were they complained on? Did they get a reprimand from their landlord? You have to ask all those kind of questions. And those are the questions you would ask before we knew anything about Kohberger. Because I had no idea who killed these kids. And right there near the end, before they arrested him, I thought perhaps maybe a neighbor had killed him. Somebody just got sick of the noise and the music and said, fuck this. I'm sick of this. I'm going in this house. Because I did ponder that before BK's arrest. I said, maybe it was a neighbor that did it. Disgruntled neighbor. Tired of complaining, tired of hearing the noise, tired of the parties. And as I told someone in the chat the other day, you can't assume that only college students lived in that area. This is a small town, 26,000 people. People live where they can afford to live. So naturally it would be mixed with single people, people with children, older people, middle-aged people, homeowners. People live where they can afford to live. Well, say we don't know where the DoorDash was delivered. We don't know if it's delivered to the slider or to the front door. Because if they're lazy, they could have told them to deliver it around the back to the slider. You would have to, trek through that little hill area. See, we don't know. We don't know if he put it at the front door, if he waited for somebody to get it. I don't know. That's the whole point of this story. You really don't know what is what. But the one thing we do know is that from his phones and CCTV, he was there after 3. I can't even remember how that information came about, but he was around. He was around that property, and often. So no matter how you weigh it, who's the target, not the target, he's watched his house over a dozen times. And he walked into this house and killed these kids. Sadly. Brutally. No remorse. Because he now is pleading not guilty. So he doesn't care. Because he's never cared. That was the whole purpose of killing him. He's never cared about human life. He didn't even care about his own life. That shows you how selfish he is. Not only are you stealing other lives, stolen rather, you didn't even care enough about your own damn life. You would forfeit your life. For what? To be known, to be recognized. You still got caught. You didn't walk around 20, 30 years undetected from killing the Idaho 4. A month later, you were arrested because you were stupid. Because you thought you were smarter than everybody, but you weren't smart. Because really, you didn't even plan this out thoroughly. So even if he watched the house, found a way to get in, went to the door before, you still was stupid because you drove your own damn car. You left the sheath. You cut your phone on 2 hours later. You rolled around. That's dumb. In a day of digital age, and you're supposed to be so smart, studying psychology and criminology, you'd have enough sense to know somebody would see my car, somebody could have seen me, somebody could have been up, somebody could have been walking to their car, somebody could have been standing outside smoking a cigarette. That's how dumb he is. I don't know, Daniel. Each news article is bringing a different timeline between 3 months and 5 months. I'm not sure. My understanding, he just got there in August, so I don't know how he could have been watching them in June. So I'm not sure. I'm going to end this stream, but I thank you for your time. If you'd like to donate to this great network, $BeGanji, 129 Cash App. Please check out my other content pertaining to the Idaho 4 students murders. Dateline has a documentary out that came out the weekend. 48 Hours has a documentary. And 2020 on ABC has a documentary. I have watched the CBS's version. It's very well done. They did a very good piece on the kids. Prayers to the families. Ethan's family has spoken out pertaining to their son. You hear that in my earlier commentary with Nancy Grace. They've shown pictures of the children when they were younger, the triplets. And what's even more sad is that now 2 children are without a brother, and they are also students at the university. And I just find it hard to believe any child would want to go back to these 2 kids specifically. Why would they want to go back? And as I brought you commentary in this live stream pertaining to the school's attitude towards the kids returning, they didn't seem to care about the students to me. Telling the kids they had to come back after hearing of a quadruple murder and that it would be an infraction on their attendance record is crass. And it's disrespectful to the dead, and it's disrespectful to the kids. Because for 1 month, a perpetrator walked the streets, this alleged suspect. So therefore, the children's lives were in danger. The staff townspeople, the people in Pullman, Washington, anybody breathing was in jeopardy of crossing paths with Kohberger. So to make these kids go back to school after sending this alert through their cell phones was just ridiculous. Just absolutely ridiculous. Well, people commit crimes every day, as I've said before. People murder for various reasons, but people usually get caught because they are seen. They are seen. They're seen on a camera. They're seen by an eyewitness. They may have threatened them in front of somebody, committed the crime in front of somebody. Somebody calls, tells it. And see, that's another thing pertaining to this case. You don't know who actually saw him going and coming out of the house, besides DM seeing him allegedly cross the floor. And will she be able to identify him in court? Because don't think his lawyer is not going to put him in a mask and then ask for the lights on, lights off. I don't think this girl is really prepared for what this lawyer is going to bring to the table. Because I'm telling you, if she acts anything like bias, she is toast in there. She is toast. Because that's what's going to be jacked up if the lights were off in the hallways, living room, whichever way he was passing through, and her room was dark. She will do a rendition in court. She'll have all the lights turned off in the court. And role play with Kohberger in a mask and dark clothing. Can you imagine that? Playing out in court? Because they do it in court. I remember watching that in the movie, The Bedroom Window. Very good movie. The woman witnessed the crime, but she couldn't tell the court and the police that she witnessed because she was having an affair with this guy who worked for her husband. So what they did was they wanted to see what she actually could see and who could see what. So she didn't testify. The boyfriend, the lover, testified, but he wore glasses and contacts. So they cut the lights off in the courtroom. Of course, this is fiction, but it's still relevant. They cut the lights off in the courtroom, and they asked the guy what he could see and make somebody out at the back of the courtroom. I think you know where this is going. He couldn't see. Because in the end, he wasn't the one that witnessed the murder. I mean, the rape or whatever, the attempted rape of the woman. Because it was the woman looking out of the window at the assault, not him. But she couldn't testify because she didn't want it to come out that she was in a man's apartment and that she had been having sexual relations with this man. So he gets up on the witness stand as if he was the eyewitness, but he couldn't point out the suspect. And I think they realized he didn't see the assault. And then the perpetrator's now looking at him and looking at someone in the audience, mumbling stuff. So he now realizes, oh, he didn't see me out there assaulting that lady. She's the one that saw it. So now he has a new target. So see, you never know what will happen in court. And I do have a feeling they're going to role play with Kohberger in dark clothes, perhaps, with a mask on. And then cut the lights off if indeed the whole house was dark and ask her, is this the person you saw in dark clothes? And yes, they could possibly shave his eyebrows down, trim them. But I think that will come out in court, that his eyebrows got trimmed before going to court. And then one could say, will that be enough to seal it if there's no other DNA but the DNA on the sheath? It's a lot of questions. Thank you for your time. Have a wonderful week. You have been listening to The Vault. Please check my community board for said updates to news stories and breaking news.